the ice and fire demon god of Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26, Transfiguration Club and Final Exam. After Lin was exhausted and his magic power was used up, Professor Green finally shouted, "Stop," and took Lin back to Hogwarts Castle. Back in the Slytherin dormitory, Lin resisted the sleepiness and read the transfiguration notes given to him by Professor McGonagall before falling asleep. The next day, Lin got up early and reviewed Professor McGonagall's transfiguration notes again, especially the part that taught him how to apply transfiguration to actual combat. Lin even experimented in the dormitory until he successfully turned the quilt into a venomous snake and was able to use it as he wished. Only then did he change it back to its original state with satisfaction and go to the Great Hall for breakfast. The Christmas holidays are the happiest days of the year for young wizards, but for Lin it is extremely tormenting. Every day of the practical course, Professor Green would not stop until he could not even emit a fluorescent flash. During these days, Lin En was in pain and joy. The magic power in his body repeatedly emptied, filled, and emptied again. Lin En's strength was improving imperceptibly. Whether it was spells or transfiguration, Lin En had reached the level of ordinary auras under Professor Green's special training. You know, Lin En is only a first-year student now. Soon, the Christmas vacation was over. In the first transfiguration class after the holiday, Professor McGonagall taught the skills of turning living things into dead things, and then gave each person a cockroach, and asked the little wizards to turn it into a quill. Lin En's silent transfiguration easily turned this cockroach into a quill with various exquisite patterns on the surface, which surprised Professor McGonagall and generously added 10 points to Slytherin. Well done, Lin En. If you have nothing else to do after class, can you stay for a while? Professor McGonagall praised Lin En happily and said. Lin nodded slightly and agreed. No problem, Professor. This transfiguration class was the last one in the afternoon, and there was still some time before the dinner after class, so Lin naturally had nothing else to do. After class, a group of young wizards filed out of the transfiguration classroom, while Lin stayed in his seat. Professor McGonagall came over and asked, "Lin, what is the maximum extent of your transfiguration now?" Lin waved his wand, and the transfiguration spell was cast silently. 5 or 6 tables around him turned into 5 or 6 lions in an instant, and the chairs next to the tables turned into venomous snakes, staring at Professor McGonagall. Lin waved his wand again, and these lions and venomous snakes quickly pounced on Professor McGonagall, and when they were about to touch Professor McGonagall, they untransformed and turned back into the original tables and chairs. "Professor, I have read all the transfiguration notes you gave me, and can use them," Lin explained to Professor McGonagall. Professor McGonagall, who had seen many storms, would not be scared by the lion and the poisonous snake before, but she was surprised that Lin, a first-year student, had such a high level of transfiguration. Professor McGonagall looked at Lin with a soft gaze. Everyone would like a good student who is talented, studious, and inquisitive. Professor McGonagall said, "Lin, are you willing to join my transfiguration club? Normally, my transfiguration club is only open to young wizards in the 6th and 7th grades, but you are an exception. Your transfiguration level is not inferior to your seniors in the transfiguration club. Turning living things into dead things is a course for first-year wizards, but transforming a large animal like a lion and being able to control its battle is not something that ordinary wizards can do." Lin's talent in transfiguration made Professor McGonagall love him and hoped to recruit him into her transfiguration club. Hearing this, Lin was delighted. Many professors at Hogwarts have their own clubs, such as Professor Flitwick's Charms Club and Professor Slughorn's Slug Club mentioned in the original book. Joining these clubs not only means that Lin's magic level can be further improved, but also means that he can get more connections. Yes, connections. The reason why Slughorn created the Slug Club is for the connections of these students who may not be ordinary in the future. I do, Professor. I wonder what activities the Transfiguration Club usually has, Lin said quickly. Professor McGonagall looked at him with relief and said, "The Transfiguration Club is not as heavy as our courses. We will gather every Sunday morning to talk about topics related to transfiguration. Our gatherings are very free. Everyone can speak freely without too many restrictions." After explaining the meeting time of the Transfiguration Club, Professor McGonagall gave Lin a new Transfiguration notebook, which recorded some new Transfiguration knowledge. Lin even found some theoretical knowledge about animagus in it. In this way, Lin successfully joined Professor McGonagall's Transfiguration Club. Unfortunately, Professor Flitwick did not invite him to join the club in advance like Professor McGonagall did. Perhaps it was because there were many geniuses in spells, but not many geniuses in transfiguration. Lin was not disappointed. After all, there were many people in Dumbledore's army in the original book who mastered the skills of silent casting, so it would not surprise Professor Flitwick that Lin could cast some spells silently. Perhaps the silent and wandless fire spell could be Lin's ticket to join the spell club, but Lin did not want to reveal his cards in front of people other than his relatives and teachers too early. Even in front of the Weir Light Winds, he only showed his silent casting skills. Moreover, Lin believed that he would definitely receive an invitation from Professor Flitwick in a few years, so there was no need for him to rush. As time passed, Merlin's wool socks were replaced with lace socks. Under Professor Green's weekly practical courses, Lin En's strength is still advancing by leaps and bounds, and the discussion on transfiguration spellcasting techniques in the Transfiguration Club has also benefited Lin En a lot in transfiguration. It is already June, and the final exams at Hogwarts are about to come. During this period, even the Weir Light Winds are not so naughty, as if the entire Hogwarts castle is caught in a tense atmosphere of review. Finally, the final exams are here. The weather is so hot and humid that it is very uncomfortable, and the examination room without air conditioning in Hogwarts Castle is even more unacceptable. After the written test phase, the practical part of the exam began. However, the practical exam that made almost all candidates wailed was as simple as sprinkling waterfall in N. After all, compared with a weekly confrontation with Professor Green, the assessment of controlling a pineapple to tap dance across a desk is simply too simple. P.S. Some readers have reported that the title of this book is not eye-catching enough, and it is difficult to attract readers. The author is soliciting book titles here, hoping that everyone can provide some suggestions. If the provided title is adopted or referenced, the author will send a small red envelope to the reader who provided the title. Thank you for your support. In addition, this paragraph will be deleted after 7 days and only remain in the author's words, to avoid the suspicion of dilution of the main text. Some readers have reported that the title of this book is not eye-catching enough, and it is difficult to attract readers. The author is soliciting book titles here, hoping that everyone can provide some suggestions. If the provided title is adopted or referenced, the author will send a small red envelope to the reader who provided the title. In addition, thank you for your support. Chapter 27 Year-End Dinner and College Cup. Lin simply waved his wand and completed the exam in the Charms class with a beautiful silent spell. The same was true for the Transfiguration class. For Lin, who could easily transform into a lion and a venomous snake, turning a mouse into a snuff box was not enough to be called an exam. When performing transfiguration, Lin even transformed the snuff box into a pattern of the Great Wall. As for the potions class exam, Professor Snape was staring at him like a bat with his robes swung. However, Lin, who had studied alchemy painstakingly, had already trained himself to be calm and composed. Even though his partner Irving's hands trembled several times under the gaze of Professor Snape, Irving, who was only responsible for handling the materials, would not have any impact on the final result. In the end, Lin handed in a bottle of perfect quality forgetfulness potion. History of Magic was the last subject of the exam. This rote memorization subject was not difficult for Lin at all. Before Professor Binns announced the collection of papers, Lin handed in the paper in advance and slipped out of the back door of the classroom. After the exams, the young wizards can have fun in Hogwarts Castle for a week, but Lin is an exception, and Professor Green is not going to let him go. After 7 consecutive days of practical classes, Lin felt that he had no strength at all. Even after drinking Madame Pomfrey's potion, he couldn't recover completely. Stop the spell. In the last practical class, Professor Green waved his wand and released Lin from the full body binding spell. Professor Green looked at Lin, who was covered in wounds, and first shook a wound to heal him, and then said happily, "I'm very happy that your strength has improved a lot in this half school year. I think even if you meet a dark wizard like Kasalak again, you can deal with him for more than 10 minutes. According to Professor Green, Lin is just a freshman, but he can deal with a dark wizard like Kasalak for more than 10 minutes, which shows how much Lin has improved. If Lin En reaches adulthood and his magic power reserves reach their peak, then even if Lin En does nothing for the next 5 years, Lin En's current fighting skills alone will be enough for him to compete with Kasalasi." Professor Green continued, "I only promised Dumbledore to teach at Hogwarts for 1 year, so after this semester, I will also leave Hogwarts. I wish you can meet a good defense against the Dark Arts professor next year." Lin En spread his hands. "Professor, it seems that your wish is going to be in vain. The defense against the Dark Arts professor next year is a garlic head with Voldemort on his back and stumbling in class. So, I plan to return to France in August and meet my teacher. If you want, you can also go to France with me to complete a trip and meet my teacher, your master. I will pick you up at your home in August." Professor Green said so. Hearing this, Lin En's eyes suddenly lit up, and he immediately agreed. "Who is Professor Green's teacher?" Exclamation mark. "That's the famous alchemist Nicholas Flamel. This is a great thing for Lin, who is learning alchemy. Teacher, this is my home address. My home has been cast under the Fidelius charm. No one who has not seen this address can enter." Lin wrote down the address of Rao Manor on a piece of paper and handed it to Professor Green. Lin was not worried that his home address would be leaked, because Professor Green was not the confidential person of the Fidelius charm cast by Rao Manor. Therefore, even if he knew the address of Rao Manor, he could not tell anyone. Even Legilimency could not read the address of Rao Manor in Professor Green's memory. Professor Green glanced at the address on the note and then burned it with flames. "No problem." Professor Green smiled gently. When Professor Green and Lin returned to Hogwarts Castle, the year-end banquet in the evening was about to begin. The hall on the first floor of the castle was already full of people. The hall was decorated with green and silver, representing Slytherin, to celebrate Slytherin's winning of the Hogwarts House Cup for 6 consecutive years. On the wall behind the guest of honor, there was a huge banner with a green venomous snake, symbolizing Slytherin. Harry Potter did not enroll this year, so Dumbledore naturally would not give Gryffindor backdoor extra points, so Gryffindor eventually became Gryffindor. Professor Dumbledore stood up and said cheerfully, "Another year has passed. Before you enjoy these delicious dishes, I must trouble you to listen to an old man's cliches. What a wonderful year this has been. Your little brains must be richer than in the past. You have a whole summer vacation waiting for you, which will allow you to digest those things before the start of the next semester and free up your brains. Now, as far as I know, we must first hold the award ceremony for the College Cup. The specific scores of each college are as follows. 4th place, Gryffindor, 281 points. 3rd place, Hufflepuff, 361 points. Ravenclaw 443 points. Slytherin 542 points. Thunderous cheers and stamping of feet immediately erupted at the Slytherin table, while Gryffindor, not far away, was in low spirits. In the past half school year, the Weirlight twins, who possessed the improved dung bomb, had obviously deducted a lot of points from Gryffindor. Of course, most of the points were deducted one after another, because the little lions were naughty every day. And Slytherin, where Lin was, had a record high house score this school year, because Lin was able to give Slytherin extra points in every class. If a contribution list was made for Slytherin's house score this year, then Lin would undoubtedly be at the top of the list, and he could even pull the 2nd place away by more than 100 points. After the year-end banquet, the final exam results would be announced. Lin En undoubtedly received an O for excellent in defense against the dark arts, transfiguration, charms, and potions, and an E for good in other courses. Although he is not as good as Hermione in the original book, compared with other young wizards, Lin En is already one of the best. Moreover, the reason why Lin En failed to excel in all subjects is not because he cannot, but because he thinks that there is no need to waste time on subjects that are of no use to him. Even if Hermione in the original book can get O in all subjects, even a third year Hermione may not be able to defeat a first year Lin En in actual combat. Please give good reviews and read on. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Returning Home. Mother and son reunited. The school year was over. On the last night, the little wizards in each dormitory were busy counting their luggage. Their wardrobes were soon empty, and everything was packed into their suitcases. But in Lin's dormitory, nothing seemed to have changed. All the clothes were placed in their original positions, and Lin was lying on the bed comfortably, flipping through a book, The Tales of Beedle the Bard, with interest. The next day, Lin just opened his small backpack with the Traceless extension spell, and then waved his wand, and his clothes and luggage jumped into his school bag like little people in a line. When they were about to leave Hogwarts Castle, a notice was sent to each little wizard. This notice was used to warn the little wizards not to use magic during the holidays. But this notice had no effect on Lin. After all, Lin either lived in Rowell Castle with his mother Irina during the summer vacation, or traveled to France with Professor Green. The trace attached to the notice could only detect the traces of spells within a certain range, but could not accurately identify the person who cast the spell. Therefore, even if Lin En casts magic at will, Trace cannot tell whether the magic is cast by Lin En or by the adult wizards around him. Moreover, even if Lin En is not with other adult wizards, he has already learned the wandless casting skills of the fire charm, and he is not inferior to the so-called Trace of the Ministry of Magic. Lin En is now trying to cast other spells without a wand. So far, he has successfully cast the two most basic spells, the Glowing Charm and the Levitation Charm, without a wand. After leaving Hogwarts Castle, Lin En and a group of young wizards took the fleet led by Hagrid to cross the Black Lake again, and boarded the Hogwarts Express. With the countryside and greenwoods passing by the window of the train, the Hogwarts Express finally entered the city, and stopped at platform 9 of King's Cross Station. On the other side of the wall, Anora dressed as an old guard maintained order and let the young wizards line up to pass. See you next semester, Lin. Remember to write to us. Fred and George waved to Lin, and walked towards the Weasleys, who had been waiting for a long time. Charlie and Percy had already met their parents before them, and Mrs. Weasley looked at her children with a smile. After the Weasley twins came over, Mrs. Weasley noticed Lin, who was alone not far away. "Child, come here quickly. I have heard about you from Fred and George, and I have to thank you for taking care of them this year," Mrs. Weasley said to Lin with a smile. She didn't seem to care at all that there were Death Eaters in Lin's family. Lin bowed slightly to Mrs. Weasley and said modestly, "No, Fred and George also helped me a lot." In fact, Lin felt a little guilty about Mrs. Weasley. After all, the reason why the Weasley twins could cause so many troubles this school year was that his improved dung bomb was a major factor. After saying goodbye to the Weasley family, Lin walked to an empty corner where the house elf Gale had been waiting for him for a long time. Bang! Lin grabbed Gale's wrinkled hand, and with a sound of gas explosion, the two disappeared. Roll manor, roll castle, first floor. Mom, I'm back. Lin walked in from the castle gate with Gale in great joy. He handed the small backpack to Gale, and asked him to take it back to the bedroom for him, and then came to his mother Irina. Although he was a reborn person, Rowena was his real mother in this life, and the relationship of relying on each other for 11 years was irreplaceable. After not seeing her child for a year, Rowena, who was strong in heart, was full of longing for her child. Lin and Rowena sat together on the sofa in the living room. Not far away, the black and white TV bought from the Muggle world was playing the news of the Muggle world, and Lin told Rowena about his life in Hogwarts in the past year in detail. After learning that Lin had a good teacher and learned alchemy, Rowena was surprised and proud of Lin. After learning about the danger that Lin En encountered on Halloween night, Rowena was terrified and a little scared. She almost lost her only child. After learning that Professor Green's practical course for Lin En made Lin En's strength increase greatly, Rowena's emotions towards Professor Green became very complicated. She wanted to thank Professor Green for accepting her child as an apprentice and helping her child become stronger and stronger, but the matter of the Black Wizard Kasiragi made her feel a little resentful towards Professor Green. Mom, don't worry about it. I took the initiative to help Professor Green on Halloween night, and I didn't really get into trouble, right? Lin En comforted her mother and finally let her put down her worries. Rowena looked at Lin En and asked softly, you said you have learned to cast some spells without a wand, and the silent and wandless casting of the fire spell. Can you show it to me? Lin En would not refuse. He did not draw his wand, but waved his left hand. A ball of fire quickly rose from his palm, jumping and changing rapidly in the air as he wished. Wingardium Leviosa. Lin En retracted the fire and chanted the spell of floating. The glass of water in front of the two of them was suspended steadily in the air and moved horizontally to Rowena. Rowena grabbed the glass with a smile and took a sip. After controlling the glass to return to the table, Lin En showed Rowena his wandless light spell. Lin En, I remember I gave you a one-handed sword for Christmas. You said you would use it to study alchemy. Can I see your results? Rowena's words were still filled with a gentle smile. She held her chin with one hand and looked at Lin En. Lin En pulled out a one-handed sword from the canvas bag at his waist, which he had cast a traceless stretch spell on. The one-handed sword looked extremely sharp, reflecting dazzling silver light under the light. At the tip of the one-handed sword, Rowena could see at least 3 alchemical arrays connected in series, which gave the one-handed sword powerful attributes of sharpness, penetration and poisoning. However, since the alchemical array with the attribute of poisoning did not absorb real venom, this alchemical array was not able to really take effect. At the handle of the one-handed sword, Rowena could see 2 alchemical arrays connected in parallel, which respectively gave the attributes of strength and dexterity. Lin En could choose one to use according to the actual situation during the battle. As for the lonely alchemical array in the middle of the one-handed sword, it was attached with the attribute of strengthening, which could strengthen the functions of the one-handed sword itself and other alchemical arrays. Please give me good comments. Please read it for 24 hours. Please recommend it. Please give me rewards. Please give me monthly tickets. Thank you all. Happy Dragon Boat Festival. Chapter 29 Rowena's exclusive weapon, Lin En's holiday life. After showing off the one-handed sword, Lin En said to his mother, Mom, I'm going to France with Professor Green in August. Is that okay? I'll meet my master, Nicholas Flamel, then. When Rowena first heard that Lin En was going to travel with Professor Green, she refused in her heart because she didn't know if Lin En would be in danger again. After all, from what Lin En had described before, it can be known that Lin En's teacher seemed to have many enemies. But after learning that the purpose of Lin En's trip was to meet the great alchemist Nicholas Flamel, Rowena immediately agreed. That's Nicholas Flamel, a famous big shot. This is definitely a great opportunity for Lin En. As Lin En's mother, Rowena naturally hopes that her child will become better. As for the dangers during the journey, although Rowena was a little reluctant, at this time she could only believe that Professor Green would not put his disciples in danger again. You can go, but you must protect your own safety. Everything must be based on your own safety. Okay? Promise, Mom. Rowena looked at Lin En's dark red eyes seriously and said so. Lin En's heart warmed up, and he quickly promised Rowena. Then, Lin En said to Rowena, Mom, in July, I plan to refine a self-defense weapon for you. What weapons are you good at? Hearing this, Rowena laughed dumbly and said, Lin En, we wizards rely on magic wands to solve problems, and we don't use melee weapons at all. Lin En said seriously, but wizards are no different from muggles. After losing their magic power, I have learned the method of refining the magic forbidden stone from my teacher. I can even refine a weakened version of the magic forbidden wand. After the magic power is disabled, melee weapons are definitely a good means. Mom, you should also practice diligently. After entering the outside world, Lin En became more and more unwilling to let his mother stay in this small role manor all year round. He hoped that his mother could come to the outside world and see the changes in the outside world over the years, but he didn't want his mother to be in danger. Seeing Lin En's serious attitude, Rowena nodded and agreed. So, Lin En locked himself in the study again, engraving alchemy circles day after day, to refine a weapon for Irina. During this period, Lin En's meals were delivered to the room by the house elf Gale using apparition. When Gale apparated, he even tried to reduce the sound of the explosion as much as possible to avoid affecting Lin En's alchemy. A week later, Lin En finally walked out of the study. In his hand, he held a purple-black dagger. The dagger looked delicate and small, and it was covered with alchemy circles. "Mom, this dagger is the weapon I chose for you." Lin En handed the purple-black dagger to Irina and said with a smile, "Compared with cold weapons such as one-handed swords, the biggest advantage of daggers is that they can surprise the opponent. After all, in a battle, no one would expect you to suddenly pull out a dagger from your waist." In addition, due to physiological differences, in most cases, women's muscle training is slower than men's, so heavy two-handed swords and swift one-handed swords are not suitable for Irina to use. Daggers are different. Daggers are small, light and beautiful. Lin En's purple-black dagger with several blood grooves makes it have a good lethality. I have engraved 6 different alchemical arrays on this dagger. In addition to the alchemical array with the attribute of strengthening, the attributes of these 4 alchemical arrays in series are sharp, penetrating, poisoning, and concealing. The alchemical array with the attribute of poisoning is temporarily ineffective because it has not absorbed the toxin, while the alchemical array with the attribute of concealing makes it difficult for the enemy to detect the existence of the dagger itself and your attack path. The 2 alchemical arrays in parallel at the back have the attributes of strength and dexterity respectively, which are the same as my one-handed sword. You can choose one to use in battle. These 2 golden runes are energy sources. When you put your hand on them, it will automatically absorb your magic power and will not be affected by the effect of the forbidden magic stone. Lin En introduced this purple-black dagger like presenting a treasure. Rowena listened with a smile, and her inner pride was beyond words. "Look, this is her child, a master of alchemy." Rowena looked at Lin En lovingly and solemnly put the dagger into her pocket. She touched Lin En's head. "You have been doing alchemy for a week. Take a break," Rowena said. Lin En shook his head and said, "Not yet, Mom. I have to make you a weakened version of the forbidden magic staff." Lin En did not intend to relax himself. He immediately returned to the room and devoted himself to the tense and exciting alchemy session. Another 3 days passed, and Lin En walked out of the room again. This time, the forbidden magic staff was much easier to refine than the purple-black dagger, because the forbidden magic staff mainly relied on the forbidden magic stone refined by the magic alchemy as the original embryo, and then engraved the alchemy array of the array alchemy. Before the holiday, Professor Green had given Lin En more than a dozen forbidden magic stones as the original embryo of the forbidden magic staff, and engraving the array was not difficult for Lin En. However, due to the difference in alchemy level, Lin En's magic forbidden staff is slightly inferior to the magic forbidden staff made by Professor Green in terms of power, but even so, it can still completely block the magic power of dark wizards like Casilak. After handing over the magic forbidden staff he made to Rowena, Lin En finally relaxed. Lin En is not a person who does not know how to combine work and rest, but things have priorities, and he is more willing to put the safety of his family first. Seeing that there are more than 2 weeks left before the time agreed with Professor Green, Lin En naturally has to let himself fully relax, because he knows that the component of his trip is only a small part, and when he arrives at Nicholas Flamel's residence, the alchemy knowledge that will be poured into his brain will definitely be enough for him. So, in the 2 weeks in late July, Lin En watched TV and watered the flowers with his mother Rowena every day and took care of the abandoned garden of Roll Manor with the house elf Gale. However, since Lin En, as the owner of the castle, did the same thing as Gale was panicked for a while, thinking that he had done something wrong to make Lin En angry. Recommend a book by a friend, titled Daoluo, Blue Silver Emperor Bloodline? Take it, author, Kyanglang Yanayu. Chapter 30 A Trip to France. More than 2 weeks passed quickly. Lin and Gale took care of the Roll Manor together. The weeds outside the castle were all removed, and fresh green plants were planted. At this time, Lin and Rowena were waiting for Professor Green's arrival in the living room on the first floor of the castle. Gale was holding a tray with fruits and ice water on it to entertain the upcoming guests. Soon, accompanied by a gas explosion, a figure appeared at the gate of the castle. Lin hurriedly stepped forward and opened the gate of the castle. It was Professor Green outside the gate. Lin, I'm here to pick you up. Professor Green touched Lin's head and took the cup of cold water from the tray in Gale's hand. Professor Green took a sip, then looked at Rowena in the living room. He saluted slightly and said, "Hello, Mrs. Roll." Rowena also nodded slightly, and she whispered, "Professor Green, my Lin is in your hands." Professor Green agreed. So, after saying goodbye to his mother, Lin grabbed Professor Green's arm. Another explosion sounded, and Lin En disappeared from the spot. At the same time, the figures of the two appeared on a hill dozens of miles away. Lin En's body shook slightly, and he had an urge to vomit. Although they were all apparition, the experience of Professor Green's apparition when bringing people and followers to appear was much worse than that of the house elves. I was originally planning to take you to France by muggle transportation, but unfortunately the situation changed, and we would catch up a little, so I chose the portkey. Professor Green said, pointing to a worn-out ceramic bowl on the ground not far away. Obviously, this worn-out ceramic bowl is the portkey for this trip. A portkey is a magical item that can quickly transfer people from one space to another. Its appearance is generally quite inconspicuous, such as a broken tire, an empty medicine bottle, etc. But after being cast with special magic, it can lead people to change time and space. Portkeys are more stable than apparition when traveling long distances, especially across continents. The portkey office of the Ministry of Magic has very strict restrictions on the use of portkeys. Before making a portkey, wizards must apply to the Ministry of Magic and register. If they use illegal portkeys, they will be arrested by the Ministry of Magic. Professor Green smiled and said, "It is very difficult to apply for a cross-border portkey. I also spent a lot of effort to apply for it." There were only a few minutes left before the trigger of this portkey. Professor Green and Lin both stretched out a finger and placed it on the worn-out ceramic bowl, waiting for the trigger of this portkey. Soon, Lin felt as if there was a hook behind his belly button and suddenly hooked forward with an irresistible momentum. Then Lin felt that his feet left the ground and flew up. He flew forward like a gust of wind and couldn't see anything in front of him. It was just a moment, and Lin fell from the air, and the scene in front of him changed. Not far from Professor Green and Lin was a street. The status of this street in the French magic world seemed to be similar to Diagon Alley. Wizards came and went, carrying some brand new magic items in their hands. Professor Green introduced to Lin with a smile. "This is the largest commercial street in the French wizarding world, called Magic Gold Street. From its name, which has the word magic for magic and gold for alchemy, you should be able to see the importance that our French wizards attach to alchemy. It can be said that in our French wizarding world, the status of powerful alchemists and spellmasters is equal." Lin nodded slightly and looked at the surrounding environment. Unlike the retro decoration of Diagon Alley, this Magic Gold Street is full of modern atmosphere. The open-minded French wizards do not seem to care about borrowing some muggle ideas. Various alchemical products, based on muggle daily necessities, are emerging in an endless stream. Professor Green took Lin to visit Magic Gold Street. During the period, Lin encountered some interesting alchemical products, and Professor Green bought them for Lin without hesitation. Although Professor Green knew that Lin was not short of money, as an alchemist, he probably had no less cash in his hands than Lin. "At the end of today's trip, I plan to take you to a shop. Maybe you will be interested there," Professor Green said, and took Lin En to the end of Magic Gold Street. A small shop full of mysterious atmosphere came into their eyes. The storefront of this shop was very small, so small that it was difficult for two wizards to enter it side by side. But even in such a shop, there were a large number of wizards queuing to enter, and the interior of this shop could accommodate them. You know, from the outside, Lin En saw that the area of this shop seemed to be less than 20 square meters. Suddenly, Lin En seemed to think of something and showed a relieved look. Because the alchemy element of this Magic Gold Street were too strong, Lin En would think in the direction of alchemy when he encountered strange things, and would think about what kind of alchemy could cause such a strange phenomenon. But he forgot for a moment that the essence of wizards was still magic. The space inside and outside of this shop did not match. It was obvious that a sophisticated traceless extension spell was cast inside the shop. Even Mr. Newt Scamander's suitcase, after casting a sophisticated traceless extension spell, had an internal space equivalent to a small village, not to mention a store. Professor Green and Lin walked to the end of the team and followed the team into the store in an orderly manner. As expected, the interior of the store was a different world. It was like a huge square. All chemical products were placed on exhibition stands. These all chemical products were protected by a light curtain released from the exhibition stand. Many wizards gathered around these all chemical products to observe. This is the largest trading platform in Magic Gold Street. You can buy most of the all-chemical products made by French alchemists here, and you can also trade your all-chemical products. You can either hand over your all-chemical products to the official staff here, who will evaluate and convert them into gold galleons, and then purchase them, or you can put your all-chemical products on the exhibition stand like them, and reach a fair barter with other alchemists. Professor Green introduced this place to Lin. Lin En looked at the front desk not far away. There were many alchemists standing there, and there were more than a dozen officials standing inside the front desk. After the evaluation, they handed the alchemists who provided the alchemy products gold galleons, and these alchemists took the gold galleons and left directly. In front of the booths with alchemy products, some alchemists reached an agreement with the owners of the booths. After handing their alchemy products to the other party, they took the alchemy products from the booths where the protective light curtain disappeared. Please recommend, reward and vote. In addition, I hope everyone can interact more. During the serialization period, I will answer any questions. Thank you everyone. Chapter 31 Bogsburton's School of Magic. After a brief thought, Lin En decided to sell some of his all-chemical products. He came to the front desk and pulled out a dozen cloaks from the canvas bag on his waist. These cloaks were engraved with all-chemical arrays and belonged to defensive all-chemical products. Their functions were similar to the anti-curse gloves, invented by the Weir Lightwinds in the original book. After evaluation, the official staff here offered Lin En 25 gold galleons for each cloak, and Lin En readily agreed. After selling these cloaks, Lin En took out a magic forbidden stone engraved with all chemical arrays. This was the product of his failure to refine the magic forbidden scepter using the magic forbidden stone given to him by Professor Green. This failed magic forbidden scepter could not be triggered by injecting magic power, but needed to be manually broken to release the power of the magic forbidden stone itself. Therefore, the value of this failed magic forbidden scepter may not be as good as the original magic forbidden stone embryo given to him by Professor Green. It was of no use for Lin to keep this failed alchemy product, but the magic forbidden stone was hard to come by on the market, so Lin planned to trade it here. Maybe he could get some good stuff in exchange. Professor Green had no objection to this. He didn't care about this kind of thing whose effectiveness decreased instead of increased due to the failure of alchemy. Soon, a big wronged, crossed out potion master came to the platform where Lin was, hoping to exchange a spoonful of the Felicity potion for the failed magic forbidden wand in Lin's hand. This spoonful of the Felicity potion was sealed in a pendant made of crystal, which flashed a charming golden light under the light. Its ornamental value was far greater than the value of the Felicity potion itself. After all, the amount of this spoonful was not much, and its value was not even much higher than the crystal used to seal it. However, Lin was still very happy to complete the transaction with the potion master. After completing the transaction, Lin bought more than a dozen alchemy products from several official booths with gold galleons, and then left the store with Professor Green. Let's find a place to rest for a night. Tomorrow we will visit my alma mater, Bogsburton's School of Magic. You will definitely be interested in it, Professor Green said. So the two of them rented 2 rooms in a tavern on Magic Gold Street and simply rested for a night. The next day, Professor Green took Lin En to the outside of Bogsburton's School of Magic through the method of apparition. Bogsburton's School of Magic is one of the 3 major magic schools in Europe. It is located in the Pyrenees Mountains of France. Bogsburton's School of Magic has a magnificent manor that amazes visitors. It is surrounded by vast lawns and beautiful mountains created by magic. It is said that part of the amazing castle and land of this ancient magic school was funded by the great alchemists Nicholas Flamel and Perenelle Flamel when they visited Bogsburtons in their youth. Therefore, the huge fountain on the campus is named after the Flamel couple. This fountain seems to have the function of repairing and beautifying. Obviously, this fountain is a product of alchemy. Boxburton's School of Magic has a good attainment in alchemy, and Professor Green's enlightenment in alchemy knowledge was also carried out in Boxburton's School of Magic. After all, he became Nicholas Flamel's apprentice after graduating from Boxburton's School of Magic. When Professor Green and Lin arrived here, a tall figure had been waiting here for a long time. In front of the two was Madame Maxim, the principal of Boxburton's School of Magic. She came up with a smile when she saw them coming. She greeted Professor Green and said, "Oh, Mr. Green, I'm so glad that you can return to Boxburton's School of Magic." Professor Green shook her hand and said with a smile, "I'm here with my students to visit my alma mater. We will go to see my teacher later." Hearing this, Madame Maxim's smile became even wider. She said, "Are you going to see Mr. Nicholas Flamel? And what is this gentleman's name? You are so young, and yet you can worship Mr. Green as your teacher. You must be extraordinary." Lin saluted Madame Maxim and said modestly, "My name is Lin En. I don't have any extraordinary qualities. It's just that my thirst for alchemy was appreciated by the teacher." Madame Maxim naturally would not take his humble words seriously. She shouted towards the school, "Miss Delica, can you trouble me to take care of the guests of Boxburton's?" As Madame Maxim finished her loud voice, a beautiful figure ran out from inside Boxburton's School of Magic. This was a girl with silver hair and skin as white as moonlight. She seemed to exude a special charm all the time. Is she a half-blood Vila? Professor Green and Lin were both men with strong self-control, so they would not be attracted by the girl's charm and lose their composure. Professor Green asked. Madame Maxim nodded and introduced. She is one of the most talented students in our Boxburton's School of Magic. Her name is Fleur Delica. She will lead you on the journey. I hope you will have a wonderful experience. Madame Maxim, as the principal of Boxburton's School of Magic, naturally could not accompany the two of them all the time. At this time, Miss Fleur Delica came forward. She saluted to Professor Green generously and said, "Hello, Mr. Green. I'm Fleur Delica. You can just call me Fleur." Professor Green nodded slightly and said, "Then thank you." So Fleur took the two of them into Boxburton's School of Magic. During the visit to Boxburton's, Fleur briefly introduced the current situation of Boxburton's. In the minds of Boxburton students, alchemy is a subject second only to the charms class, and almost every Boxburton student in the second grade and above has a certain knowledge of alchemy. "Miss Delica," Madame Maxim said, "that you are one of the most talented students here, so I wonder how good your attainments in alchemy are." Lin, who was listening, asked curiously. Fleur was quite proud at this moment. She put her hands on her hips and said proudly, "My alchemy is no weaker than any of my peers." Upon hearing this, Lin was surprised, and his curiosity grew. "Miss Delica, I'm 2 years younger than you. I wonder if I can compete with you in alchemy knowledge." Lin did not think that Fleur was exaggerating. He just wanted to learn from her seriously. Chapter 32, Competition Among Array Alchemists. Furin was also a little surprised. She said, "Mr. Roll, you are not a French wizard, right? Do you know alchemy?" Before Lin En could answer, Professor Green smiled and explained to Furin, "Lin En is my first disciple, so he naturally learned alchemy from me." Furin suddenly realized, but Lin En's request for competition also aroused her competitive spirit. Moreover, Furin also wanted to see what kind of skills Lin En had in alchemy that could make him favored by Professor Green. "Tell me, how do we compare?" Furin shook her silver hair behind her head and said with her hands across her chest. Although Lin En was Mr. Green's disciple, he was 2 years younger than her, and he had only been in the magic world for a year. Furin was confident that she could defeat Lin En. Lin En lowered his head and pondered for a while, then pulled out 2 silver one-handed swords from his pocket and asked, "If I'm not mistaken, Miss Delica should also be a formation alchemist, right?" Furin nodded. "So," Lin En proposed, "how about this? You and I complete the enchantment of this one-handed sword within the specified time, and then my teacher will use magic to control the 2 swords to chop each other. Whoever's enchanted sword breaks will lose. How about that?" Furin thought about it and agreed readily. "No problem. As for the specified time, let's set it to 1 hour. After all, we have limited time, and Madame Maxim wants me to take you to visit the entire Boxburton School of Magic. If the specified time is only 1 hour, then both Lin En and Furin can only engrave one alchemical array at most, and there will be no more time to engrave more alchemical arrays. In this way, the core of this competition lies in the depth of their mastery of alchemical runes. After all, when it is impossible to use multiple alchemical arrays to work together and make them complement each other, the strength of a single alchemical array can only rely on the strength of the alchemical runes in it. Lin En and Furin are both real alchemists of the formation system. Even without a formal workbench, they can concentrate on refining the alchemy array just by squatting on the ground. Lin En took out his mithril carving knife. He quickly used the mithril carving knife to carve an energy source symbol and a rune hub on the handle of the one-handed sword, and then began to think about the alchemical rune he was about to carve. If it was just the basic alchemical rune attributes that everyone knows, such as sharp, reinforcement, and strength, then Lin En would never be able to defeat Furin. Therefore, he must find a more powerful and equally suitable existence for engraving on melee weapons from the alchemical runes he has learned. Got it. Suddenly, Lin En seemed to think of something. He quickly used the mithril carving knife to carve an alchemical rune that looked like a wave on the sword spine of the silver one-handed sword. Then he engraved an alchemical rune that looked like two little people and connected them together with a stroke. The two alchemical runes represent airwave and copy respectively. The former can absorb magic power to release airwaves, while when applied to a weapon like a sword, it presents the form of sword energy. The copy alchemical rune connected in series can copy multiple sword energies and attack the enemy together with the original sword energy. After completing the engraving of the core runes of the two alchemical arrays, Lin En took a look at the remaining time. There were only 20 minutes left, which was enough for Lin En to engrave another alchemical rune. Then he had to use the last 5 minutes to connect all the alchemical runes together to make it a complete alchemical array. Without time to think about it, Lin En engraved a strengthen rune on the one-handed sword to strengthen the first two core runes. Then another thin golden line connected the three alchemical runes with the energy source and the rune hub, completing the refining of this alchemical array. After completing his alchemical work, Lin En turned his eyes to Furin. Furin was holding a small and exquisite carving knife with rose pink patterns, and she carved the last stroke on the silver one-handed sword, completing her alchemical work. The two handed their alchemical works to Professor Green. Lin En's eyes were calm, while Furin's face was full of confidence. After confirming that there was nothing missing in the alchemical works of the two, Professor Green waved his magic wand. The surging magic power surged out of his magic wand and divided into two, controlling the silver one-handed swords made by Lin En and Furin respectively, and activating the alchemical array in them. Under the control of Professor Green, the two silver one-handed swords quickly collided in the middle, and when the two were about to collide, the silver one-handed sword made by Lin En actually shot out several sword ki out of thin air. These sword ki flashed with silver edges and bombarded the silver one-handed sword made by Furin with the force of thunder. The alchemical array made by Furin seemed to contain defensive alchemical runes. The silver one-handed sword made by Furin flashed a dark golden light, and a golden film appeared on the surface of her silver one-handed sword, trying to resist the attack of the sword energy. However, more than a dozen sword energies bombarded her silver one-handed sword. Even if the defensibility of the golden film was strong, it might not be able to withstand such a fierce attack. A silver sword energy suddenly slashed on the golden film, breaking it apart, and the second sword energy that followed, and even the third and fourth sword energy slashed on the body of the silver one-handed sword, breaking the silver one-handed sword made by Furin. Even Professor Green did not expect that the two one-handed swords made by Lin En and Furin did not really collide with each other, and the victory or defeat was already decided. How is it possible? Furin was a little unbelievable. She understood the power contained in Lin En's alchemical array, but why didn't she think that the airwave rune could be transformed into sword energy after being applied to the sword? Exclamation mark. Lin stepped forward and extended a hand to Fleur. It's a pleasure to compete with you, Miss Delica. Can you tell me about your alchemical ideas? Although Fleur lost, she was not discouraged. She held Lin's hand and explained, I was thinking at the time that, since our swords will eventually collide with each other, the test should not be the attack ability of the two swords, but their defense ability. The prerequisite for failure is that the refined sword is broken. As long as my sword can remain intact in the end, I will definitely win. Therefore, I plan to refine a defensive all-chemical array instead of an offensive one. But I didn't expect that you actually engraved the airwave rune on the sword, and it even worked, releasing a long-range attack. Fleur said with a wry smile. Putting aside the victory or defeat, this duel did teach Fleur a lot. The multi-directional thinking is sometimes really the key to alchemy. The same is true for Lin En. Furung's perspective is based on the essence of this duel, which is also worth learning from. If he hadn't applied an all-chemical rune that seemed to have nothing to do with it, he might not have been able to defeat Furung. I'm also very happy to compete with you. Just call me Furung from now on. Furung said generously. She was very willing to meet a strong person like Lin En who had strong academic knowledge. The college entrance examination results will be released this afternoon, and I'm a little nervous. Chapter 33 Nicholas Flamel, the grandparents relative of the nth generation. Well, Fleur, just call me Lin from now on. Lin smiled and nodded. He was also happy to meet a new friend at Bogsburton's School of Magic. During the following visit, Fleur became more active and lively. Sometimes, without Lin asking questions, Fleur would take the initiative to introduce everything about the place they were in. Therefore, Lin's journey at Bogsburton's School of Magic was perfect and everything went so smoothly. When they were about to part with Fleur, Fleur was even a little reluctant. After all, those witches in the same school, who were arrogant and incompetent, were jealous of her because of her strength and hated her because of her half-blood Veela identity. She really didn't want to stay with those witches in the same school. However, Lin and Professor Green were different. They were not affected by Fleur's special charm as a half-blood Veela, which made Fleur feel equal. Goodbye, Fleur. Maybe we will meet again in 3 years. At the exit of the manor of Bogsburton's School of Magic, Lin waved and said. Lin was referring to the Triwizard tournament that would take place in his 5th grade. Bogsburton's School of Magic was one of the participating schools, so Fleur would naturally come to Hogwarts Castle as a guest. However, Fleur did not know this. She thought Lin would come to France again in 3 years, so she was very happy and decided to take Lin to visit the French magic world at that time. Next, we have to go to the last stop, which is my teacher's residence. Professor Green grabbed Lin's arm and said with a smile. Hearing this, Lin's heart was filled with excitement. With the sound of gas explosion, Lin and Professor Green appeared in a strange manner. This manor was vast and boundless, and it seemed that it was not marked on the map of the Muggle world. In the center of the manor, there was a short and old hut. Teacher, I'm back. Professor Green gently tapped a metal block that looked like a microphone at the door of the hut with his wand, and said to it, after it made a beep sound. Soon, the door of the hut was opened. However, the one who opened the door was not Professor Green's teacher Nicholas Flamel, but a humanoid robot. The robot made a pleased gesture and took the two into the hut. After entering the hut, Lin En saw the photo of a young man and woman on the counter at first sight. If he guessed correctly, the young man and woman should be Mr. Nicholas Flamel and Mrs. Perinell Flamel 600 years ago. Walking a few steps further inside, on the sofa in the hut, Lin En saw a skinny old man, and next to the old man was an old lady whose hair had fallen out. These two old people are the legendary Flamel couple. Obviously, although the longevity brought by the Philosopher's Stone has allowed them to live for more than 600 years, it has not brought them immortality. Their bodies have become increasingly fragile under the wear and tear of the years, and illness has entangled their bodies. Looking at these two old men who seemed to have fractures, if they moved even a little, Lin En seemed to understand why the old man decided to let Professor Dumbledore destroy the Philosopher's Stone a year later. Teacher. Professor Green saluted Nicholas Flamel, and he walked forward and helped the old man up. Lin also stepped forward and saluted the two old men. Grandmaster, hello. I'm Lin Raw, a student of Teacher Green. After hearing Lin's words, Mr. Flamel, who was originally wondering about Lin's identity, suddenly showed a gratified smile, and his eyes became much kinder. I didn't expect that it's time for this little guy, Wallison, to accept an apprentice. Come on, Lin, sit down quickly, let the master take a good look. Nickel Flamel said with a smile, and he greeted Lin. You know, since the incident during Grindelwald's rampage, his apprentice Wallison Green has been listless, even his eyes are empty, and now Wallison has picked himself up and even accepted his own apprentice. How can this not make the old man feel gratified? Exclamation mark. Lin naturally would not refute the old man's face. He sat beside the old man obediently. Nico grabbed Lin's hand and asked kindly, as if he were an elder, "Lin, how are you doing with your alchemy studies recently? I wonder if Wallison has taught you well." Lin told Nico about his alchemy studies. Nico nodded slightly. He grabbed Lin's hand and slightly tightened it. Lin felt a strange magic flow into his body through the old man's hand. Lin did not struggle, but obediently let the magic flow through his body. "Is that so? It seems that your magic power is growing much faster than your peers. Wallison is still not experienced enough." Nico Flamel said softly, "Lin, I think that with your current magic power reserve, it is enough to start learning the magic alchemy." Hearing this, Lin's face lit up. You know, according to Professor Green's original estimate, Lin would have to wait 3 months before he could start learning the knowledge of magic alchemy. "Lin, for the next half month, I will teach you on behalf of your teacher. How about that?" Nico said kindly. Now there is still more than half a month before Hogwarts starts. If Lin is given 7 days to buy textbooks for the new semester and to reunite with his family, then Lin can still live in Nico Flamel's manor for half a month. Lin nodded and said, as the master said. So, Lin and Professor Green lived in Nico Flamel's manor. Don't look at Nico Flamel's small and narrow hut, that's just the living habit of the Flamel couple. They are used to a frugal life and don't like a luxurious environment. But even so, the Flamel couple, who have lived for more than 600 years, have enough property given by the big men of various periods to build dozens of castles in this manor, not to mention the savings of the Flamel couple as alchemists for more than 600 years. Nico generously arranged a small villa for Lin En and Professor Green to live in the manor, and Lin En had to come to Nico's hut at 8 o'clock every morning to receive instruction. Although Nico is now skinny and can be blown down by a gust of wind, his magic power is not weaker than Professor Dumbledore. He had reached the level of a Demon King wizard more than 300 years ago. You know, even Professor Green's ability to refine all chemical arrays out of thin air was demonstrated and taught by Nico himself. After learning that Lin En was curious about this skill, Nico played the characteristics of the olden generation of intergenerational intimacy. When he waved his wand, he refined dozens of alchemical arrays around him. These dozens of alchemical arrays burst out golden starlight all over the sky and turned into endless meteor showers across the sky at night. This bizarre scene caused the amazement of countless muggles outside, but no one could have imagined that this miraculous scene was actually a small spell cast by an old man when he was in intergenerational intimacy. Please support. Please recommend. Reward and monthly ticket. Chapter 34 Alchemy and Magic Combined. In the following week, Lin En followed Nico to learn the knowledge of legal alchemy every day and tried to use legal alchemy to refine some small gadgets. Unlike array alchemy, the alchemy of legal alchemy does not require the assistance of a carving knife, but requires the assistance of flames. This is why when Lin En first asked Professor Green for advice, Professor Green suggested that Lin En practice more fire spells. The alchemy link of legal alchemy has great requirements for flames. A large part of the practice of legal alchemists is spent on practicing the control of flames, and Lin En's strong affinity for flames just meets this point, which allows Lin En to skip this step and step into a higher level before others. Therefore, after only 1 week of study, Lin En's knowledge of legal alchemy is no less than that of other legal alchemists who have practiced for 2 or 3 years. After all, most legal alchemists need to spend 1 or 2 years to lay the foundation for controlling flames. On the 6th day of Lin En's study of alchemy, Professor Green also came to Nico's hut. After confirming that Lin En's theoretical knowledge of alchemy met the requirements, he taught Lin En the method of refining the forbidden magic stone. After obtaining the method of refining the forbidden magic stone, Lin En spent a whole day to integrate it and completed the refining of the first forbidden magic stone under Nico's guidance. This forbidden magic stone was not very big, only the size of a fingernail. After Lin En engraved the alchemy array on it using the array alchemy, he embedded it in a bracelet and completed the refining of a forbidden magic bracelet by copying the good In the next 3 days, Lin En continued to improve his knowledge of alchemy, while refining more forbidden magic stones, to improve his practical ability of alchemy. At this time, there were 5 days left before Lin En returned to the UK. Nico Flamel came to Lin and signaled Lin to stop the alchemy in his hand. The old man's tone was a bit mysterious. Lin, you don't need to continue to learn more alchemy knowledge in the remaining days, and your practice should be put aside for now. You can practice these things by yourself after returning to Hogwarts. Come with me, our next course is not held here. Nico walked out of the hut tremblingly, and Lin hurriedly supported the old man to prevent him from being blown down by the wind. After leaving the hut, Nico pulled out his wand and knocked on a metal cube on the ground in front of him. In a flash, Lin and Nico appeared in a square training ground with a side length of more than 200 meters. This square training ground was so large that even Quidditch could be played in it. Lin was a little surprised. The metal cube he saw before turned out to be a manually triggered door key. It was obvious that the metal cube was an alchemical product modified by Nico, and its function was to repeatedly teleport the wizard who activated it to a specific location. Nico pointed the wand towards himself, and his lips moved slightly, as if he was chanting a spell. A light came on, and Nico seemed to stand up straighter, not as frail as before. Lin, do you think magic is stronger, or alchemy? Nico looked at Lin mysteriously and asked. Lin hesitated for a moment. He looked at the old man in front of him, and thought of Dumbledore, who was called the White Lord. He shook his head and said, Master, I don't know. Nico said, if you ask me, I don't know either. Both magic and alchemy have their powerful places, but we are wizards after all, not pure alchemists. Lin, I plan to teach you a secret method that can combine alchemy with magic, and even make alchemy an auxiliary magic. Are you willing to learn it? This secret method is what I studied 200 years ago. I didn't even teach that guy Wallison. Of course, that's only because his magical talent is not enough to match his alchemical talent, so he can't use this secret method. But you are different. You are only in the 1st grade, but you can complete a kind of silent and wandless magic. Your magical talent is definitely not weaker than your alchemical talent. Nico Flamel said seriously. His eyes seemed to light up. Hearing this, Lin En hurriedly said, Master, I'm willing to learn. Nico nodded slowly and said, the combination of alchemy and magic requires not only the knowledge of array alchemy and magic alchemy, but also the ability of wizards to cast magic silently and without a wand. I think that guy Wallison should have told you that if you want to refine an alchemy array out of thin air, your magic reserve is far from enough, right? Lin En nodded. After Lin En and Professor Green teamed up to defeat the Black Wizard Cassilici on Halloween night, Lin En wanted to learn Professor Green's method of refining an alchemy array out of thin air to fight, but was rejected by Professor Green for this reason. Only to hear Nico continue, it is true that you can't do alchemy without a carrier, but what if you use your magic as a carrier for alchemy? Nico's words seemed to open the door to a new world for Lin En. Can magic also be used as a carrier for alchemy? Exclamation mark. Lin En was a little confused. Of course, pure magic cannot be used as a carrier for alchemy, but what if the product of alchemy is transformed into a magical form and integrated into magic? Just as you can refine an alchemy array on the forbidden magic stone, you can also refine your own alchemy array on magic that integrates alchemy. Nico Flamel said. He waved his wand, and dozens of different substances condensed out of thin air under the burning of flames, and finally turned into a ball of magical power under the refining of alchemy. Clear water like a spring. Nico chanted a spell, and a ball of water was summoned from the top of Nico's wand, and the previous ball of magic power merged into this ball of water under the control of the wand. Then, Nico waved his wand again, and all chemical runes condensed on the surface of the water flow, and then merged into the water flow. Under the combination of alchemy and magic, this ball of water turned into a special alchemical water flow that could change its hardness according to Nico's will, and could be turned into a water blade that could cut iron like mud at any time. Nico raised his wand, and took the water back into the wand. If it were you, you would need a carving knife to perform alchemy on magic. In addition, the product of the combination of alchemy and magic can be recovered and stored by your wand. In other words, as long as the power contained in this product of alchemy and magic is not exhausted, you can reuse it without repeating the alchemy process. The special water flow appeared and disappeared with Nico's will. The alchemy chapter is almost over in the next 2 days, and then this article will enter the main line. There will not be many chapters on alchemy in the future, and even if there are, they will serve Lin En's fire magic. The next story is the Song of Ice and Fire. Actually, when I was conceiving this book, I didn't plan to write about alchemy, but because Lin En came online a year earlier than the heroine, and this year couldn't be dry without a plot, so I created Professor Green and let Lin En learn alchemy. As I was writing, I accidentally got out of control, and this made alchemy an inseparable part of Lin En. But don't worry, the following stories will focus on the main line, and will not be written off. After all, I have written 2 books with 1.4 million words, so I still have some experience. Finally, I would like to ask for recommendation tickets, rewards, and monthly tickets. Thank you for your support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35, Forbidden Magic Fire, Self-Created Magic. After telling Lin En the basic principles of combining alchemy with magic, and showing him how to do it, Nico explained in detail the special skills contained in this secret method and the special techniques required to achieve this level. It took Lin En a whole day just to absorb this knowledge. The next day, Nico brought Lin En to the huge square training ground again. Nico smiled and said, "Lin En, it's time to try combining alchemy with magic. The only magic you can cast silently, and without a wand, is the fire spell, so you can use the fire spell as the carrier of this attempt. As for the magical power of the magic alchemy and the content of the alchemy array of the array alchemy, it's up to you to decide." Lin En nodded, and his eyes became cautious. In the past week, Lin En learned many methods of refining magic alchemy creations, but what he wanted to try most was the refining of the forbidden magic stone taught to him by Professor Green. So, Lin En raised his hand to summon a ball of fire and condense the materials needed to refine the forbidden magic stone. An alchemy continued, and when it came to the step of condensing it into a forbidden magic stone, Lin En did the opposite. He waved his magic wand and a powerful magic force was released, breaking up the half-finished alchemy creation and turning it into a special magic force containing all chemical power. Although this magic power is called magic, Lin En felt the breath of forbidden magic in it. It is a magic power itself, but it can also seal magic power. The appearance of this contradictory thing made Lin En exclaimed incredible. After a simple study, Lin En found that this special magic power processed by secret methods can suppress or even seal the magic power of Lin En's enemies as Lin En wishes, but will not suppress the magic power of Lin En's own people. In this way, this forbidden magic power will not accidentally hurt friendly forces. Lin En thought so, and was very surprised. You know, the main reason for Professor Green's accident that year was not only that the strength of the forbidden magic wand was not enough, but also because it sealed Professor Green's own magic power. Otherwise Professor Green could have escaped with apparition. Now, Lin En can distinguish enemies from friends with the special magic power refined by the secret method, and only suppress the enemy's magic power. This is a qualitative improvement. I believe Professor Green will be very happy after learning about this. Thinking so, Lin En began the next step. Lin En raised his left hand, and a ball of flame burned above Lin En's left hand. Lin En's right hand holding the magic wand waved again, controlling the special magic power to merge with the flame in Lin En's left hand. Under the effect of Professor Nico's secret method, the two forces slowly merged together, and this ball of flame also had the power to bind magic. Lin En maintained the fused magic flame with his left hand, and put away the magic wand with his right hand, and took out the mithril carving knife. Lin En wrote accurately and quickly, drawing patterns on this magic flame. You know, for every second this magic flame lasts, its consumption of Lin En's magic power will increase by 1 point, so Lin En's refining time is extremely limited. Without time to think, Lin En carved out the energy source and rune hub in just 2 minutes, and then in the next half an hour, he carved the alchemical runes of flame, amplification, strengthening and other amplification types on it at the fastest speed in his life, as well as several alchemical runes with the power of forbidden magic that he needed to engrave on the forbidden magic stone when making the forbidden magic staff. Finally, Lin En connected them all in series to form a complete alchemical array. The power of the secret method worked again. The strange power made the power of 3 different systems, namely, the alchemy of the law system, the alchemy of the array system and the magic flame, cleverly merged together and became one. At this time, Lin En put away the carving knife and held the flame in both hands. This special magic flame was like a newborn child, jumping in Lin En's hands, showing Lin En the intimacy of a child to his father. The diameter of this flame was 1 meter, and its power of forbidden magic was constantly affecting the surroundings. Lin En raised his hand and put this magic flame into his body instead of the magic wand. After taking back the magic flame, Lin En was surprised to find that he could actually sense that this special magic power was dormant in a corner of his body at this moment and could appear at any time according to his command. Nico said, "The power of this flame will not expand. If you want to increase its power, then you need to repeat the previous process and use your body to absorb the new special magic power and store it in your body. In this way, when you need to call them, you can call out a flame of sufficient size." Lin En nodded. Unlike the flame created out of thin air by the fire spell, this special magic flame needs to be stored in the body in advance. If Lin En's body is a fish tank, then the special magic power dormant in the corner of his body is the water in the fish tank, and the process of Lin En combining alchemy and magic is the process of making this water. Therefore, repeating this process many times can increase the water in the fish tank, so that when Lin En needs water, he can pour more water from the fish tank. Nico said with a kind smile, "I didn't expect that you, Lin, could successfully combine alchemy and magic on your first try. Since you have completed the creation of this magic flame, please give it a name. This special magic flame has never appeared in the history of magic. Therefore, it is not an exaggeration to say that this magic flame is Lin's own magic. A new magic naturally needs to have its own name." Hearing this, Lin lowered his head and pondered. The essence of this magic flame is a special flame after all, and its name naturally cannot be separated from fire. It contains the power of the forbidden magic stone and the lifelong efforts of the teacher. Adding the word forbidden magic to its name is not only a summary of its power, but also a respect for the teacher's lifelong achievements. In that case, Lin En suddenly raised his head, and there seemed to be flames dancing in his dark red eyes. "Master, I have thought about it. This special magic flame will be called Forbidden Magic Fire." "Forbidden Magic Fire?" Nico nodded slightly. "It's a good name. I think your teacher will be proud of you." Lin En smiled. "Of course, Master." After naming the Forbidden Magic Fire, Lin En happily tried to use the Forbidden Magic Fire in this training ground. This Forbidden Magic Fire can suppress the fluctuations of magic power near it. The closer the magic power is to it, the easier it is to be suppressed. If this flame is expanded large enough to cover the entire area, then Lin En believes that he can even use this Forbidden Magic Fire to create a magic sealing barrier that can seal the magic power of wizards. Chapter 36 Professor Green's Gift. In the evening, Nico triggered the alchemy door key inside the training ground and returned to Nico's hut. After leaving Nico's hut, Lin En came to Professor Green's residence. "Teacher, I have some ideas on how to improve your magic forbidden staff." Lin En knocked on Professor Green's door and said to him. Upon hearing this, Professor Green was stunned at first. He didn't believe that Lin En could improve the magic forbidden stone that he had spent decades inventing after only learning alchemy for more than a week, but he didn't think that Lin En would lie to him. So, Professor Green motioned Lin En to show the results. Lin En raised his left hand, and a ball of flame with black lines flashed from his palm, and a strange breath spread from the magic forbidden fire. Feeling his magic power being slightly suppressed, Professor Green couldn't help but exclaimed, "This is the power of the forbidden magic stone." "Lin En, you actually integrated it into your magic flame?" Lin En explained, "Teacher, this is the secret method taught to me by my master. This flame is called the Forbidden Magic Fire. I combined the power of the forbidden magic stone of the alchemy of the law system, the forbidden magic runes of the alchemy of the array system, and the magical power of the blazing flame to form a special flame." Professor Green reached his hand close to the flame, feeling the burning sensation from the flame and the power to suppress magic. He sighed. I didn't expect that the teacher would teach you this secret method. Integrating the power of the forbidden magic into magic is the first step for you to perfect the forbidden magic staff. Lin En shook his head and said, not only that, teacher, look. As Lin En said this, he judged Professor Green as a friendly force in his mind, and then the forbidden magic fire's suppression of Professor Green's magic power disappeared instantly. With the change of Lin En's mind, the forbidden magic fire's suppression of Professor Green's magic power sometimes appeared and sometimes disappeared. After realizing this, Professor Green asked in disbelief, Lin, can your forbidden magic fire distinguish between enemies and friends? Lin nodded. Yes, it can judge the wizards within the influence range as I wish, and suppress the magic power of hostile wizards. Hearing this, Professor Green's body trembled slightly, and his eyes seemed to be a little moist. It can actually do this. If my forbidden magic scepter could distinguish between enemies and friends, then I, who have full magic power, can face Grindelwald, whose magic power is suppressed. Even if I can't defeat him, I can have the ability to protect myself. Professor Green understood that the ability of the forbidden magic fire to distinguish between enemies and friends is Lin's improvement on the forbidden magic power he invented. Lin continued, if in the future, I can thoroughly study and understand this power, and apply it to the forbidden magic scepter, then even if the forbidden magic scepter cannot seal the magic power of the Demon King level wizard, it is enough to change the offense and defense of both sides. As he said, Lin took the forbidden magic fire in his hand back into his body. Professor Green grabbed Lin En's shoulders. He believed that his decision to accept Lin En as his apprentice was correct. Good boy. Good boy. Go back and rest first. Let me think about the improvement of the magic forbidden wand. Lin En agreed and went back to his residence to rest. Professor Green stood there. The night enveloped the entire manor. The white moonlight fell on the world, illuminating the surroundings of Professor Green. Professor Green remained silent for a long time. It was unknown how long it had been before he moved. With a light wave of the wand, accompanied by a bang, Professor Green appeared outside Nico's hut. Nickel Flamel unexpectedly did not fall asleep at this time, but waited for him at the door of the hut. Valison, I guessed you would come. Green looked at Nickel and said in a complicated tone, teacher, about that secret method. Nickel shook his head and said, at that time, you had not yet mastered any silent and wandless magic, and could not meet the requirements for learning this secret method. You have a high talent in alchemy, and are not willing to concentrate on practicing your magic power. It was not until that incident that you gradually met the requirements for practicing this secret method. But, are you still willing to learn this secret method? Hearing this, Green smiled bitterly. Indeed, even if you are willing to teach me now, I'm afraid I'm not willing to learn it. After all, even if I can learn the secret method now, so what? It is still impossible to save her. The hope of the future. Let the people of the future. After speaking, Green fell into silence again. Nickel did not continue to speak. The two stood silently at the door of the hut, looking at each other without saying a word. When it was getting light, Nicholas Flamel suddenly spoke up. Do you think that what I promised Dumbledore was too early? Green was stunned and said, are you talking about asking me to bring the Philosopher's Stone to England and hand it over to Dumbledore last year? Nicholas Flamel nodded slightly and said, to be honest, I originally told Dumbledore that after he has used the Philosopher's Stone next year, he can destroy it, because we have lived enough and there is nothing too much to miss in this world. Hearing this, Green was shocked. Teacher, you. Before Green could finish his words, Nicholas Flamel raised his hand and interrupted Green. But now, Lin En, you have brought to me a dual genius of alchemy and magic that is extremely rare in more than 600 years. Perhaps, he needs the power of the Philosopher's Stone. When you return to England, tell Dumbledore that after the events next year are over, give the Philosopher's Stone. 3 days later, it was time for Lin to return to England. After respectfully bidding farewell to Nicholas Flamel, Lin and Professor Green returned to the door of the Leaky Cauldron in England using the cross-border port key provided by Nicholas. You don't need my help to buy the textbooks you need for the next school year, do you? Professor Green said with a smile, after sending Lin to the Leaky Cauldron. Lin smiled and shook his head. took out the parchment sent by Hogwarts that recorded the textbooks needed for this year from his pocket, gestured to Professor Green, and then said, "Of course not." Professor Green said, "Very good. Lin, do you have any gift you want? At the time of parting, I plan to give you a gift. Anything will do, including some things from the muggle world." Hearing this, Lin lowered his head and thought for a while. The next school year is the year when Harry Potter will enter school, and things that will happen in Hogwarts this year include Kino, who is parasitized by Voldemort, entering Hogwarts as a professor of defense against the dark arts. A troll appears in the underground classroom on Halloween. Voldemort hunts unicorns in the Forbidden Forest, and the Chamber of Secrets, where the Philosopher's Stone is stored, is invaded. Although Lin could have kept a distance from him, with his last name of Rawle, he would definitely become the focus of Voldemort. In this case, what he needs most is probably something that can protect himself. Thinking of this, Lin looked at Professor Green and said, "I want a pistol from the muggle world. Our heroine will appear in the chapter updated tomorrow. Warm welcome in advance. In addition, please support with recommendation votes, rewards, and monthly tickets." Chapter 37 Snow White Figure. Professor Green was a little surprised about this, but he did not reject Lin's request. As early as a year ago, when he went to Hogwarts to teach, Dumbledore had revealed in his conversation with Professor Green that Voldemort might not be dead. Therefore, in Professor Green's view, the British magic world is still very dangerous. For the safety of his disciples, it is not too much to equip them with more powerful weapons. Desert Eagle, how about it? Professor Green asked. Since Lin mentioned that he wanted a pistol, then Lin must have a certain understanding of firearms, so Professor Green did not introduce too much, but asked directly. As a semi-automatic pistol using large caliber bullets, the Desert Eagle is too heavy and has too strong recoil for ordinary adults, which makes it impossible for most adults to use it as a weapon. This is also the reason why the Desert Eagle has not been popularized in the military. However, as a wizard and alchemist, Lin En can not only strengthen his power through magic, but also refine equipment that strengthens his power through magic alchemy, and even enchant the Desert Eagle with a ray alchemy to reduce the weight and recoil of the Desert Eagle. Therefore, in Professor Green's opinion, if you want to choose a weapon that best suits Lin En among the pistols, then the Desert Eagle is undoubtedly an extremely suitable choice. Lin En nodded very happily and said that he was looking forward to getting this weapon. So Professor Green touched Lin En's head and said, "No problem, you go buy textbooks first, and I will send your gift to the Roll Mandabai Owl before you start school." After deciding on the gift to give to Lin En, Professor Green waved his wand and apparated away from the leaky cauldron. Lin En entered the leaky cauldron and planned to enter Diagon Alley through the entrance in the backyard. Old Tom, the owner of the leaky cauldron, was still standing at the bar. After Lin En greeted Old Tom, he walked towards the backyard. However, Old Tom unexpectedly followed. When the young wizards first came to Diagon Alley, they would receive guidance from Old Tom. When they came to Diagon Alley again, they only needed to pass through it by themselves. Old Tom would not come to help again. After all, the leaky cauldron had so much business, and he could not take care of so many young wizards. Therefore, Old Tom's behavior made Lin En a little strange. When Lin En asked, Old Tom smiled bitterly and said, "Last month, I don't know which young wizard kicked the trash can 2 bricks away when passing Diagon Alley, which almost made my backyard full of wizards who couldn't enter Diagon Alley. So I have to keep an eye on this place myself during this period of time. Oh my god, is there any resin?" Exclamation mark. Lin En couldn't help but chuckle. After nodding to Old Tom, he opened the passage to Diagon Alley and entered Diagon Alley. The process of purchasing new textbooks and magic materials went very smoothly. Lin En also purchased some materials needed for alchemy. The price of these alchemy materials was not expensive. After all, no one could use them except alchemists, and there were very few alchemists in the UK. With oversupply, they naturally could not have a very high price. Perhaps the price of these alchemy materials could be multiplied by more than 10 times after being exported to the French magic world, but according to the current conservative level of the British magic world, except for some illegal stowaways who privately made cross-border door keys, no one would do such a business. After completing the purchase of all the things, Lin En found the house elf Gale, who had been waiting for a long time in an alley in Diagon Alley according to the agreement in the letter he sent home before, and returned to Rao Castle through Gale's apparition. After returning to Rao Castle, Lin En began to sort out the necessary things for the new semester. In addition to the materials necessary for learning magic and alchemy, Lin En also needs to prepare more raw materials to refine more forbidden magic fire. For now, his forbidden magic fire is his biggest trump card, even far exceeding his ability to cast spells silently and without a wand. Therefore, he refines forbidden magic fire just like Hans in selecting soldiers, the more the better. The day before going to King's Cross Station, the Desert Eagle sent by Professor Green through an owl finally arrived at Roll Castle. After unpacking, Lin En got the gun body, some replacement parts and an instruction manual. In addition, there were 100 rounds of bullets given by Professor Green. At the bottom of the package, Lin En also saw a letter from Professor Green. In the letter, Professor Green suggested that Lin En try to enchant the Desert Eagle gun body in the 100 rounds of bullets at the same time to make them more powerful. In response, Lin En gladly accepted and planned to try to refine it on the first night of his arrival at Hogwarts Castle. The day of school soon arrived. With the help of Gale, Lin En apparated to King's Cross Station and passed through the partition wall to platform 9. Soon after he entered the platform, he saw the Weir Light Winds also running in from the other side of the partition wall with a cart. Lin. After seeing Lin, Fred and George both greeted him. Lin, we still don't understand the muggle electrical knowledge you sent me during the summer vacation. Are you sure it has something to do with alchemy? George said with some annoyance. During the July vacation, Lin had sent a book containing the electrical knowledge he learned in junior high school in his previous life. In Lin's opinion, learning electricity first and then learning array alchemy can achieve twice the result with half the effort. Lin nodded affirmatively and said, of course. With your impatient temper, of course you can't understand it. Go back and study it carefully. When you understand it, I guess you will step into the threshold of alchemy. Fred spread his hands and said, we just like to be happy, can't stand loneliness. George continued. Suddenly, two more figures came through the partition wall. One of the boys had the same red hair as the Weir Light Winds, while the other boy had black hair and wore glasses. Lin could see a lightning-shaped scar on the other boy's forehead. I guess these two people are on Weir Lie, the younger brother of the Weir Light Winds, and Harry Potter, the savior. Just as Lin was about to get on the bus, he saw a snow-white figure rushing out from the partition wall. This was a very beautiful girl with beautiful silver hair. Silver hair? Could she also be a half-blood Veela? Exclamation mark. But where did the half-blood Veela come from in Hogwarts? Exclamation mark. Seeing this scene, Lin couldn't help but stop, his mind full of doubts. Chapter 38 Irina Lowell. Lin En subconsciously released his magic power to sense the snow-white figure in the distance. Wait, she doesn't seem to be a half-blooded Veela, but a normal human witch? Exclamation mark. The result of the magic feedback made Lin En's face look even more strange. The silver-haired girl did not give people a sense of charm like Fearing, but instead conveyed a cool breath, making people feel very comfortable in this summer. At this moment, the silver-haired girl looked over here, and Lin En saw her face. Careful Lin En found that the hair color of this silver-haired girl was not pure silver, but more like snowflake white, and the ends of her hair seemed to be a kind of nearly transparent ice blue, which looked like dyed hair from a distance. This special hair color reminded him of himself. You know, Lin En's own hair color is also mainly black, and the ends of the hair gradually transition to a dark red like a flame. In addition, this girl's eyes seemed to be unusual. Unlike the blue eyes of most British women, this girl's eyes were not that deep blue, nor were they the light blue of Professor Green. It was an ice blue like ice. As Lin En released his magic to detect the other party, the closer his magic was to the other party, the more his magic could sense the increasingly active ice element magic around him. Lin En was sure that the girl's special appearance came from the other party's blood. Could it be that the other party also had a strong affinity for a certain element like himself? Exclamation mark. Lin En thought so. Dude, what are you thinking about? The Hogwarts Express is about to leave. If you don't get on the train, you will have to fly to Hogwarts on your own broom. At this time, Fred and George sang in unison and dragged Lin En into the carriage. There were light winds, and Lin En was still in this compartment, but this trip was different from last year. There were light winds, who made a fortune by selling improved dung bombs, had enough confidence to buy the magic snacks pushed by the train attendant. This time, the Weir Light Winds refused Lin En's treat and took the initiative to spend 3 gold galleons to buy a lot of snacks to share with Lin En. We are here today thanks to you, Lin. How can we let you treat us again? Fred and George said with a smile, and Lin did not refuse their kindness and ate with them. Of course, the 3 of them did not eat very full. After all, they had to save enough stomachs for the delicious feast of the freshman's admission dinner. In the evening, the train arrived at the destination. After changing into wizard robes, the 3 of them walked towards the front compartment and prepared to get off. When passing by the compartment where the savior Harry was, in addition to the trio of Harry, Ron, and Hermione in the original book, Lin also saw the silver-haired girl he had seen before. She seemed to be a character outside the original book. Lin thought so in his heart. Since Lin was already a second-year student, he no longer needed to take a boat to cross the Black Lake, but followed the large group to take the carriage pulled by the Thestrals to Hogwarts Castle. When he came to the Thestrals' carriage, Lin found that he could see the Thestrals pulling the carriage. These Thestrals had no flesh on their bodies. Their black fur was tightly attached to their skeletons, and every bone was clearly visible. The Thestrals' heads looked like those of dragons, with pupilless eyes that were white and staring intently at the front. Wings grew from the bulges between the shoulder bones of these Thestrals, large black tough wings that looked like they belonged to giant bats. Lin was not surprised that he could see the Thestrals. After all, he and Professor Green had killed the Dark Wizard Cassilis, so he was a witness to his death. However, Lin did not make a fuss, but pretended not to see the Thestrals, and entered the carriage with the Weir Light Winds. After arriving at Hogwarts Castle, the 3 of them separated. Lin followed the young wizards of Slytherin College to the Slytherin long table in the auditorium and waited. Not long after, a group of freshmen came to the auditorium under the leadership of Professor McGonagall, and the sorting hat was placed on a 4-cornered stool like last year. Soon, the sorting ceremony began. The sorting hat twisted its wrinkled body again, as if it was dancing a kind of enchanting hot dance, and its cracked mouth sang a song as unpleasant as scratching glass. At the end of the song, Professor McGonagall finally came forward, holding a roll of parchment that recorded the new students of this year. Hannah Abbott. As Professor McGonagall's voice fell, a ruddy-faced little girl with 2 golden braids stumbled out of the queue. She put on the hat, which just covered her eyes. Hufflepuff. The sorting hat shouted loudly. Susan Bones. Hufflepuff. Terry Boot. Ravenclaw. The sorting ceremony was carried out in an orderly manner. When the first letter of the little wizard's surname reached G, Professor McGonagall shouted loudly, Hermione Granger. Little Hermione almost ran to the stool and put the sorting hat on her head. The sorting hat stayed on her head for a while, as if thinking whether to sort her into Ravenclaw or Gryffindor. Finally, the sorting hat said loudly, Gryffindor. After a while, Professor McGonagall read out, Neville Longbottom. This is the Gryffindor Swordmaster. Lin looked over, and under his gaze, the sorting hat sorted Neville into Gryffindor. Just as Lin was watching Neville walk to the Gryffindor long table, he heard Professor McGonagall read out a name he had never heard of, Irina Lowell. According to the alphabetical order of the surnames, the first 2 letters of both Longbottom and Lowell are L&O, and Longbottom's 3rd letter is N, which is before Lowell's W. So Neville went on stage first, and Irina Lowell was right after him. At this time, Lin was a little surprised to see the silver-haired girl he had seen before came up, sat on the stool, and put on the sorting hat. It turns out that the silver-haired girl's name is Irina Lowell. Lin En secretly memorized this name. Irina Lowell's sorting process did not seem so ordinary. Just like Lin En last year, it took a full 2.5 minutes for the sorting hat to give the final result. Gryffindor. Irina opened her eyes. Her beautiful ice blue eyes flickered slightly, and she walked over to the Gryffindor long table amid the fierce applause. Please recommend, reward and monthly ticket please. Chapter 39 New Roommate, Irina's past and present life. After Irina Lowell was sorted into Gryffindor, Draco Malfoy, Harry Potter, and Ron Weasley who appeared in the original book, also completed the sorting in order of their surnames. Soon, the sorting ceremony ended, and the welcome dinner officially began after Professor Dumbledore's brief speech. Among the dinners at Hogwarts Castle, only the welcome dinner, Halloween dinner, Christmas dinner, and year-end dinner were the most sumptuous, so even the self-righteous little snakes of Slytherin could not help but turn into Hufflepuffs and eat a lot when faced with these delicacies. After the dinner, Lin En followed the large group back to the dormitory. But unlike last year, there were 3 new students in his dormitory this year. A platinum boy, and 2 black-haired followers. This is Crab, this is Noel, they are my followers. In addition, my name is Malfoy, Draco Malfoy Sr., I think we can be good roommates. The platinum boy extended his hand to Lin En and introduced himself. Seeing these 3 people, Lin couldn't help but be a little surprised. Ever since he was assigned a dormitory last year, and had a dormitory to himself, he knew that he would have 3 first-year students as his roommates this year, but he didn't expect that his new roommates would be the Malfoy trio. Lin nodded to them slightly and said, "My name is Roll, Lin Roll. If you don't disturb my studies, then I think we will be good roommates." After that, Lin gently waved his wand. With a beautiful silent spell, countless textbooks and his alchemical materials flew out of his backpack in an orderly manner, and were placed in their proper places within just a few breaths. This silent spell shocked the Malfoy trio. Silent spell casting? Isn't that something that only seniors above the 5th grade can learn? Malfoy said in disbelief. Lin En turned his head and said, "If you are talented enough, and are willing to spend a lot of time practicing, I think you can do it." Lin En did not want to continue the conversation. One night was very short, and he still had to try to use the array alchemy to enchant the desert eagle given to him by Professor Green. He just hoped that the 3 new roommates would not be too noisy, so as not to affect his alchemy. After carefully taking out his desert eagle from his pocket, Lin En began to think about which alchemy array should be used to enchant this gun. Malfoy and others not far away had never seen the world, and they just thought that what Lin En had in his hand was a piece of broken iron picked up from somewhere, so they did not continue to pay attention to Lin En, but went to do their own things. For the Desert Eagle, the firearm can be enchanted with alchemical arrays with attributes such as agility, lightness, precision, and strengthening. The main purpose is to reduce the burden. As for the power of the firearm, it depends on the enchantment of the bullet. Lin En quickly made up his mind. He took out the mithril carving knife and prepared for alchemy. 2 flowers bloom, each with its own beauty. While Lin En was doing his alchemy, in the Gryffindor girls' dormitory, Irina sat on her bed, seemingly thinking about something. She was a college student in her previous life. During a summer trip to Antarctica, she accidentally discovered a refrigerated truck parked on the side of the road by a poaching gang. While the gang had left the car and had not returned, she secretly opened the door of the refrigerated truck's cold storage, slipped in, and released all the Antarctic penguins captured by the poaching gang. But just when she was about to get away, the poaching gang happened to come back. The poachers did not find her in the cold storage, but locked the door of the cold storage directly from the outside. She was locked in the cold storage by mistake, and eventually froze to death in the extremely cold environment of the cold storage. She thought she would sleep in the cold storage forever and never wake up again, but unexpectedly, she was reborn in 1980 in Britain, born in a middle-class family with the surname Lowell. Just when Irina, who was reborn, was ready to become a successful person in Britain with her foresight of the future, the admission notice from Hogwarts broke her original fantasy. Until that moment, Irina knew that she was not traveling through the original world, but the magical world of Harry Potter. Irina did not consider refusing to join Hogwarts and continue to develop in the Muggle world. However, if the little wizard does not receive formal teaching, the magic power in his body will be out of control, and he will become an obscure. Irina didn't want to explode and die. Moreover, if she didn't have enough self-protection ability, then she and her family, even if they had the highest power and wealth in Britain, would only be the dead souls under the killing curse. So she had to accept the admission notice of Hogwarts and prepare to go to the magic world. When she was practicing magic in the summer, Irina unexpectedly found that she had a very high talent for a magic called the freezing spell. Not only that, she could cast all magic related to ice easily. Even the water summoned by the spring could be turned into the form of solid ice according to her mind. Until the first day of school, Irina was able to cast the freezing spell silently. This talent surprised Irina. In her opinion, no one except her could cast silently before entering Hogwarts. Of course, Irina also wondered why she had such a special talent. After all, her ancestors were all muggles and did not have any wizard blood. But she was relieved soon and just regarded it as a gift from fate for her good deeds in her previous life. In her previous life, she was frozen to death for rescuing trapped little lives, and in this life, she has the power to control ice. This makes sense, isn't it? Exclamation mark. Irina thought so. Irina, what are you thinking about? A cute voice came from beside her. Irina looked over and saw Hermione looking at her curiously. Yes, Hermione is Irina's roommate. Irina was very happy to think of sleeping with cute little Hermione. Little Hermione is sweet and soft. As a girl who loves Hogwarts, Irina naturally has a great liking for Hermione. Irina smiled lightly, and her smile made Hermione feel comfortable unconsciously like a breeze. Nothing, I'm just thinking about a kind of magic I practiced. Hearing this, the academic Hermione immediately became energetic. What magic? I also practiced a lot of magic during the summer vacation. Maybe we can share our experience. Chapter 40 How dare you bring catnip to Professor McGonagall? Exclamation mark. Freezing spell, do you know it? Irina asked. Hermione lowered her head and pondered for a while and finally found the relevant information of the freezing spell from the pile of spells in her mind. She immediately said, as if reciting to the teacher, I know, freezing spell. The spell is freezing the earth and the sky. The effect is to freeze the creature or object hit. Irina was not surprised that Hermione knew this spell. After all, in the second year of the original book, Hermione used the freezing spell to freeze the Cornish elf released by the stupid Professor Lockhart and caught it. In order to prove that she really knew this spell, Hermione pulled out her wand and pointed at a vase not far away, freezing the earth and the sky. A beam of ice blow light burst out and hit the vase in an instant, freezing it into an ice sculpture. After doing this, Hermione first looked at Irina proudly, with an expression that looked like she was asking for praise. But soon, Hermione seemed to remember something. She stuck out her tongue and said that, Irina, I don't think I can defrost the vase. If I use the fire spell, the vase will definitely break. Irina just smiled at her, then waved her wand, and the frozen vase immediately returned to its original state. After mastering the silent casting of the freezing spell, Irina found that her understanding of the spell had deepened a lot. Even without using the universal spell of the spell stop, she could rely on her understanding of the freezing spell itself to remove the effect of the freezing spell. Seeing this scene, Hermione's eyes suddenly showed stars. Wow, Irina, how did you do it? As Hermione said, she came to Irina's bed and sat beside her. Irina subconsciously leaned against Hermione and gently rubbed her shoulder with her chin. Hey, what are you doing? Feeling the strangeness coming from her shoulder and Irina resting on her shoulder, Hermione's face turned slightly red. Irina showed a strange smile. What's wrong, Hermione? Come, let me see. I'll teach you how to use the freezing spell in reverse. You should carefully feel the trajectory of your magic power. As she said that, Irina stretched out her arms to hug Hermione's waist and grabbed the wrist of her right hand holding the wand. Hermione, a first-year student, was petite and just fit in Irina's hand. Irina took a deep breath with satisfaction and then whispered the spell. Hermione felt that the magic power in her body seemed to be controlled by Irina and injected into the wand. A beam of ice blue light shot out again, freezing the vase. Then, Irina recited the spell again, and this time the syllables of her spell seemed to change a little, and the beam of light from the wand in Hermione's hand seemed to be deeper. The beam hit the vase and restored it. Being hugged by Irina, Hermione still blushed a little, but her thirst for magic knowledge made her temporarily ignore the close contact with her new best friend. She repeated the counter spell Irina taught her, and began to try to freeze the vase and restore it. Soon, she mastered the spell casting technique with her extraordinary intelligence, and she happily showed off to Irina. Irina did not show her silent spell casting skills, so as not to arouse Hermione's competitive spirit. She clapped lightly to express her congratulations to Hermione. Just then, Irina and Hermione's other two roommates came back. They had to stop practicing magic, turn off the lights, and go to bed. The next day, in the Slytherin dormitory, Lin got up early again. The first class this morning was Professor Quirrell's defense against the dark arts class. Although Quirrell's lectures were all stuttering and useless, in order to guard against Voldemort behind Quirrell's head, Lin decided to keep enough energy to prepare for any eventuality. Therefore, he only engraved the energy source and rune hub last night and went to bed early. Of course, he also completed the alchemy planning for the Desert Eagle gun and bullets. Next, he only needs to complete the alchemy step by step. The first class in the morning started soon. When Lin En arrived at the defense against the dark arts classroom, Quirrell was on the podium holding a textbook. Lin En opened the textbook and sat in his seat, pretending to be an ordinary and obedient student. On the other side, the first class of the Gryffindor first year students in the morning was Transfiguration. Hermione pulled the sleepy Irina to get up early and went to the Transfiguration classroom to preview. This made Irina so sleepy that she wanted to lie on the table to make up for a nap. She thought she could lie down when she came to Hogwarts, where the atmosphere of playing bad was prevalent, but she didn't expect that she still had to finish the morning late under Hermione's drag. The time for class was getting closer and closer. Irina rubbed her eyes and raised her head just in time to see a tabby cat running in from the classroom door, jumping onto the podium, and then squatting on the podium to scan the little wizards who had already arrived in class. Most of the young wizards who were able to arrive early were more interested in learning, so they had no interest in the tabby cat that suddenly arrived. They just looked at the tabby cat and continued to do their own things. But Irina's eyes lit up when she saw this, and her ice blue eyes seemed to have a flash of light like snowflakes. Irina jumped up under Hermione's puzzled gaze, and then ran and jumped to the podium, looking at the tabby cat on the podium with a smile on her face. Under the strange gaze of everyone, Irina nonchalantly put her hands into her pockets, as if groping for something. Soon, her eyes lit up, and she grabbed a handful of catnip from her pocket. Mummy, mummy, catnip. Irina rubbed the tabby cat's head while putting catnip into the tabby cat's arms. Irina's bold behavior made the tabby cat stagnate in place, and after a while, the physiological reaction of catnip to the tabby cat made the tabby cat sneeze several times in a row. After realizing that something was wrong, the tabby cat suddenly jumped forward and transformed into Professor McGonagall's original form. Irina, how dare you? How dare you bring catnip into the Transfiguration classroom? The anger on Professor McGonagall's face almost turned into reality. Irina took a step back in panic. The panic on her face was naturally fake. After all, how could she, who was familiar with the original book, not know that the tabby cat was Professor McGonagall's animagus form? Exclamation mark. But who could refuse to give a handful of catnip to the dear dean who could transform into a cat? Exclamation mark. Professor, I didn't mean it. Irina looked frightened and apologized to Professor McGonagall carefully. Seeing this, although Professor McGonagall was a little speechless, she had to let Irina return to her seat. After all, ignorance is not a crime, and it was she who entered the classroom directly in the animagus form, so these little wizards naturally could not know their identity. But in Professor McGonagall's blind spot, Irina secretly gave Hermione a year after returning to her seat. Please read it, recommend it, give me a reward, and give me a monthly ticket. This book has been sent out in the first round of recommendations, and the website probably won't give it traffic. Whether this book can survive depends on your support. If possible, share this book with your friends. Thank you. Chapter 41. We never use transfiguration spells to punish students. Hermione asked in disbelief. Irina, where did you get the catnip? Irina stuck out her tongue and leaned into Hermione's ear and said, when I was preparing for the summer vacation at home, I heard that there is a profound transfiguration called animagus, which can turn wizards into small animals. The animagus registered with the Ministry of Magic in the UK includes Professor McGonagall who can turn into a cat. Irina's breath hit Hermione's earlobe, making her face slightly red. But after hearing Irina's words, Hermione looked even more incredible. So you know that the tabby cat is Professor McGonagall, and then you still do this? As a good baby, Hermione couldn't imagine what Irina did. Irina smiled. Oh, who can refuse a cute cat, Dean? Hermione couldn't help but roll her eyes. Oh, Merlin's lace stockings. Just when Hermione wanted to continue to say something, she seemed to see something terrifying and immediately kept silent. But Irina didn't notice it at all. She continued, if Professor McGonagall hadn't turned back so quickly, I would have prepared some cat strips and cat teasers. Just as Irina was talking excitedly, a hand was placed on her shoulder. This froze Irina in her place, and her head turned back piece by piece. Oh. Could you please, Miss Lowell, show me your cat strips and cat teasers? Professor McGonagall looked at her with a half smile, and her clenched right hand showed her inner anger. Glancing at the helpless expression on Hermione's face, Irina forced a smile. Professor, do you believe me if I said you heard it wrong? Professor McGonagall's eyes were sharp. Guess whether I believe it or not? Facing Professor McGonagall's murderous gaze, Irina resisted the urge to say guess whether you believe it or not, and lowered her head. Just as the classroom fell into a dead silence, two boys rushed into the classroom rashly and rescued Irina. Irina lowered her head and glanced at Professor McGonagall, who turned to the classroom door. She finally breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you, Harry and Ron. At this moment, Harry and Ron saw that they were caught for being late and immediately stood there, waiting for Professor McGonagall to lecture them. Maybe I should turn Mr. Potter and Mr. Weasley into a pocket watch so that at least one of you can keep time. Professor McGonagall said to the two seriously. Harry argued, Professor, we are lost. Professor McGonagall said without comment, then turn it into a map. You don't need a map to find your seat, right? After that, Professor McGonagall asked the two to return to their seats. Irina carefully raised her head and looked at the few people and said in a voice that she couldn't even hear, we never use transfiguration to punish students. At this time, Irina, stay after class. Professor McGonagall said without turning her head. I'm done. Irina threw herself into Hermione's arms with a sad face, making Hermione, who was blushing, at a loss. At the lunch, Irving Farley came over and whispered, have you heard? That freshman named Lowell from Gryffindor actually stuffed catnip into Professor McGonagall's animagus form. I'm so envious. Ugh, that's incredible. Lin glanced at him and said, are you a Hufflepuff? When did you become so fond of gossip? Although Lin appeared calm on the surface, his heart was already in turmoil. Good fellow, he actually dared to bring catnip to Professor McGonagall? Exclamation mark. He really didn't dare to do such a thing. I'm so envious. Ugh, that's outrageous. But, isn't that Irina also a time traveler? Exclamation mark. Lin thought suspiciously in his heart. He turned his head to look at the silver-haired girl who was talking and laughing with Hermione at the Gryffindor long table. The girl had a delicate face and a crisp laugh, which attracted the surrounding Gryffindor boys to turn their heads and pay attention. Lin shook his head. Forget it, don't think about it. Even if that Irina Lowell was also a time traveler, she was not a big threat to him now. As far as this school year is concerned, his biggest threat is Voldemort behind Quirrell's head. Thinking of this, Lin subconsciously glanced at Quirrell in the teacher seat. This garlic head was wrapped in a thick headscarf, and the headscarf smelled like an old woman's foot wrap. Could this Quirrell be a double agent? Exclamation mark. It's really admirable that Voldemort can tolerate that stench. Lin complained in his heart. At 3:30 in the afternoon, it was the first flying class for the first year students at Hogwarts. Irina and Hermione and other Gryffindor and Slytherin freshmen hurried down the steps and came to the field in front of the door to prepare for their first flying class. At this time, most of the young wizards had arrived. Harry and Ron stood next to Irina and Hermione. The four of them had already met in the compartment of the Hogwarts Express. The flying class professor, Miss Hooch, arrived. She had short grey hair and yellow eyes, like the eyes of an eagle. Okay, what are you waiting for? She said sternly. Everyone stand next to a broomstick. Quick, quick, hurry up. Irina glanced at the broomsticks at everyone's feet. These broomsticks were broken and old, and some branches stuck out in all directions. She was afraid that these broomsticks would fall apart in mid-air. Stretch out your right hand and place it on the broom handle, Madam Hooch shouted in front, then say, get up. A group of little wizards shouted, get up. Irina subconsciously said, pigeons. Hermione on the side looked confused. What does it have to do with pigeons? Irina realized that she had shouted wrong and hurriedly shouted again, "Get up." The English for get up is up, and Irina would never admit that she thought all ups were pigeons. When everyone spoke, Harry's broom immediately jumped into his hand, while Hermione's broom just rolled on the ground, and Neville's broom didn't move at all. The broom at Irina's feet floated up a little, but soon fell back. But Irina, who didn't follow martial ethics, kicked the broom at its base when it fell back, causing it to spin in the air, and then she caught it in her hand. Then, Madam Hooch showed them how to ride on a broom without sliding off their heads. She walked around the team and corrected the little wizard's hand grip. Soon, it was time for them to practice. "Okay, when I blow the whistle, you should kick your legs off the ground and push hard," said Madam Hooch. "Hold the broom steady, rise a few feet, then lean forward slightly and fall vertically back to the ground. Listen to my whistle. 3, 2, 1. But things didn't go as Madam Hooch wished. Before the whistle blew, the extremely nervous Neville subconsciously kicked the broom and flew up into the sky. "Come back, kid," Madam Hooch shouted. Neville rose straight up, like a cork spraying out of a bottle. His horrified, pale face looked at the ground below, which was rapidly receding. He opened his mouth to gasp for air and slid down the side of the broom handle. Wingardium Leviosa. Irina, who knew the plot in advance, cast a levitation spell quickly. Her spell was accurately applied to Neville, slowing down his falling speed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42. Wash your mouth for your dad. However, her talent in the levitation spell was not as strong as the freezing spell. Although Neville's descent speed was slowed down, it was not enough to save him from injury. Neville fell to the grass with a bang, and his face turned pale with pain. Madam Hooch leaned over to look at Neville. Her face was as pale as Neville's. After a simple examination, Madam Hooch pulled Neville up. Fortunately, only the wrist was broken. She turned and looked at the other little wizards on the field. "I'm taking this child to the hospital. No one of you is allowed to move. Put the flying broom back to its place, otherwise, you will be kicked out of the Hogwarts gate before you can even say Quidditch," Madam Hooch threatened. After Madam Hooch left, Malfoy couldn't help but jump out. He grabbed the memory ball that Neville accidentally dropped on the grass. "Look, that idiot Longbottom's grandmother gave it to him." Malfoy raised the memory ball with a smug look on his face. "Bring it here, Malfoy," Harry said, pulling out his wand from his waist. Seeing this, Irina slapped her forehead. The famous scene was about to happen again. Malfoy grinned and said, "I want to put it somewhere for Longbottom to pick up. For example, put it on a tree. How about it?" Hearing this, Harry shouted, "Bring it here." Before Harry could do anything, Malfoy jumped on a flying broom and prepared to take off. Malfoy was a seeker who could fight Harry back and forth in Quidditch. He was really good at flying. He was suspended at a height parallel to the top of a rubber tree and showed a mocking smile to Harry. Seeing this, Harry also grabbed his broom and chased after Malfoy one after the other. "Don't do that, Harry. Madam Hooch will expel you." Hermione on the side was furious. Who understands family members? It's okay for her to take care of 2 children alone, but this child named Harry is so naughty. "Don't worry, Hermione." Irina held her down and raised her wand with her other hand. Although she was happy to witness the famous scene of Deha's love-hate relationship, Malfoy's behavior was definitely considered school bullying, and Malfoy's bad attitude made even her a little bit unbearable. Swish. Irina swung her wand, and a nice blue beam of light burst out from the top of the wand, breaking through the air and heading towards the broom under Malfoy. This silent freezing spell was very beautiful, but the tense chase in the air made everyone ignore Irina's silent spell. Snap. The sound of ice bursting sounded, and the broom under Malfoy was immediately frozen into solid ice and fell downwards. The coolness from under his buttocks made Malfoy launch himself, and then fell under the action of gravity. However, Malfoy didn't seem to want Harry to succeed easily. He threw the memory ball in his hand into the distance, and then took out his wand and cast a flying spell towards the memory ball. The memory ball was hit by the spell, and flew out instantly, while Malfoy fell heavily to the ground, and uttered a wail. Seeing this, Harry flew out in a hurry. He chased the memory ball, and flew over the castle in an instant, and then followed the memory ball to fall rapidly. Harry dived on the grass, and caught the memory ball almost close to the ground. Seeing this scene, the little wizards of Gryffindor cheered and surrounded Harry. But at this moment, an angry shout came. "Harry Potter!" Professor McGonagall ran towards them angrily. Harry stood up from the ground, trembling all over. "I have been in Hogwarts for so many years, and I have never." Professor McGonagall was so surprised that she couldn't speak. The lenses of her glasses flashed with anger. "How dare you? You will break your neck soon." Professor McGonagall carried Harry away. Hermione looked very worried, and Irina comforted her beside her. Having read the original story, she naturally knew that Harry would not be expelled, but became the seeker of the Gryffindor Quidditch team. "Don't worry, Hermione, you see I used the freezing curse to knock Malfoy down and he's fine." Irina patted Hermione on the back, and said with a smile. Hermione rolled her eyes at her and said, "You didn't get noticed by Professor McGonagall." At this time, Malfoy covered his swollen butt with one hand, but walked over with a very arrogant look on his face. Your famous Harry Potter is about to be expelled from Hogwarts, and can only roll back to the muggle world in disgrace. You stupid guys will be expelled from Hogwarts sooner or later," Malfoy said. He looked at Irina, "And you damn mudblood, you dare to attack me. You also wait to be expelled. My father is the school director. I will tell my father about your attack on me." Hearing this, Irina raised her eyebrows, raised her wand and cast another silent spell. A clear stream of water was summoned, and it hit Malfoy's face directly. This time, Irina's silent casting of the clear water spell was seen by everyone. They were all a little surprised. Even Hermione looked at her in surprise. "Giloo. My dad, Gurgle, but he's the school director. You, Gurgle, let go, Gurgle. I was wrong, Gurgle. Stop, and amp. Asterisk% Malfoy's face was washed by Irina's clear water, and the remaining water flowed into his mouth, as if it was determined to clean his mouth. Malfoy kept choking on the water. He was still swearing at first, but soon begged Irina for mercy, and then he rolled his eyes. Seeing this, Irina took back the spell and shouted, "Clean your mouth for me. Otherwise, I don't mind washing your mouth for your dad." After spitting out the water in his mouth, Malfoy opened his mouth to curse, but when he saw Irina pointing at his wand, he retreated in dismay. At this moment, the little lions all looked at Irina in admiration. The way they looked at Irina was as if they were looking at a holy Valkyrie. "Irina, will you cast a spell on Malfoy?" Hermione looked at her worriedly. The scene of Harry being dragged away by Professor McGonagall just now was still vivid in her mind. Hearing Hermione's voice, Irina instantly turned back to her usual nonchalant self. She put her arm around Hermione's shoulder and said with a giggle, "It's okay, at most you'll be put in detention again. Anyway, I've been put in detention for a week by Professor McGonagall because of the catnip, cat strips and cat teasers this morning. I don't have to worry about too much debt." Hermione rolled her eyes at her again. Is this how the phrase "I don't have to worry about too much debt" is used? Exclamation mark. I've asked the editor in charge, and the current follow-up reading of this book is 95. If it can reach 500 follow-up readings before 300,000 words are put on the shelves, and if it can have 500 average subscriptions, then the author can get a full attendance award. As long as the author can fill his stomach with the full attendance award, then the author guarantees that this book can be written to at least 1 million words, and it can have a perfect ending. Please support me. Chapter 43 You are embarrassing Malfoy. However, Hogwarts would not punish Irina for an unoffensive spell like spring water. After the flying class, everyone rushed to the hall to eat. In the hall, Harry, who was released by Professor McGonagall, came to the Gryffindor table. After seeing Harry, Malfoy came over from the Slytherin table, and Crabbe and Goyle followed him. "Are you having your last meal, Potter? When are you going to take the train back to the Muggles?" Malfoy, whose mouth was washed by Irina with spring water, still had his nature, and he arrogantly mocked Harry. Harry naturally couldn't stand it, and he immediately retorted. Malfoy raised his head and invited Harry to a duel. If you have no objection, then tonight, a duel between wizards, only with wands. Before Harry could say anything, Ron, who was standing beside him, agreed directly, and his speed made Irina almost think he was an undercover agent. No problem. Who is your assistant? Malfoy glanced at the two big idiots behind him, thought for a while, and said, Crabbe, at midnight. How about it? We will meet you in the trophy display room, which is never locked. After that, Malfoy walked away arrogantly. Watching Malfoy leave, Harry looked at Ron with a confused face. Ron, what is a wizard duel? What about an assistant? Ron said lightly, oh, if you die, the assistant will take over. Ron's calm appearance once again made Irina wonder if he was an undercover agent sent by Malfoy. However, after catching the horrified look on Harry's face, Ron hurriedly added, but people will only die in a proper duel with a real wizard. Malfoy can only shoot sparks at best, and can't hurt the other party. Come on, you are not much better than him. Irina was listening on the side, and was a little speechless. At this time, Hermione, who was holding Irina's hand, couldn't sit still. Sorry to bother you. I couldn't help but eavesdrop on your conversation, but you must not wander around the castle at night. Think about it, if you are caught, how many points will Gryffindor lose? Hermione said indignantly. Irina didn't feel anything. Although she was also a Gryffindor, with the famous savior here, you can deduct as many points as you want. Anyway, Gryffindor will still be Gryffindor at the end of the term. Fortunately, it was Harry. If it was someone else, Gryffindor would have become Gryffindor long ago. Harry didn't take it seriously. This is a duel between Malfoy and me. It has nothing to do with you. At this moment, Harry seemed to have thought of something. His eyes lit up. He looked at Irina and said, Irina, your magic level seems to be very strong. Can I invite you to be my assistant? Irina's silent spell of clear water like a spring had shocked Harry severely. You know, he even had difficulty in casting the most basic floating spell. Hearing this, Irina spread her hands and made a helpless expression. You know, Harry, I was locked up for a week by Professor McGonagall. Harry was a little disappointed, but he was too stubborn to ask Hermione for help, so he could only ask Ron to be his assistant. Ron agreed without hesitation. After the dinner, in the Slytherin dormitory, Lin, who took out the Desert Eagle and was about to continue alchemy, saw Malfoy, who had been laughing non-stop since he came in from the door. Hey, Roll, you know what? Harry Potter from Gryffindor is a fool. I asked him to duel in the trophy room at midnight tonight, and he actually believed it. I will report him to Filch later, and Potter will be finished. Ha 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 ha. Malfoy laughed and said to Lin as if showing off. In his opinion, being able to cheat the savior of a lot of money is definitely a capital for showing off. However, Lin did not agree with him, but asked quietly, you are Malfoy, one of the sacred 28 families, right? Malfoy was stunned, of course. Lin sighed and said, but what you did, is there one thing that you, Malfoy, should do? Look at what you are going to do, breaking the rules of wizard duels, using the cleverness of snitching to defeat the opponent. You are a descendant of a pureblood family, but you do not defend the honor of the pureblood family at all, but instead trample your own face under your feet. You are embarrassing, Malfoy. Although Lin does not value the so-called pureblood, he can only teach people like Malfoy in the way of pureblood families. After all, Malfoy attaches great importance to the nobility of pureblood, and naturally does not allow himself to tarnish the reputation of pureblood. At this time, Malfoy was stunned, and he looked at his hands in disbelief. Yes, what is he thinking about? Exclamation mark. Wizard duels are a way to win glory invented by pureblood families, but he wants to trample on it with his own hands. Exclamation mark. Sorry, Lin, Although Malfoy was arrogant, he was not stupid. He immediately looked at Lin with shame. Lin waved his hand. He had no interest in the grudges between these children. Since you have agreed to a duel, then you should fulfill your promise. Don't disturb my alchemy next. After that, Lin raised his hand and shot out a light curtain to isolate his desk to block the sound from the outside world. Seeing Lin like this, Malfoy was not annoyed. He just nodded vigorously and said to himself, I understand. Crabbe, you should stay alert and go with me to the duel with Potter later. When Malfoy made up his mind, Lin had already started alchemy. A desert eagle will be enchanted by multiple alchemy arrays at the same time, and each alchemy array must have its core alchemy rune. Therefore, Lin En had already completed the energy source and rune hub last night. The first thing he had to do now was to complete the engraving of the core alchemical runes of the 4 alchemical arrays: agility, lightness, precision and strengthening. These 4 alchemical runes are the main runes of the alchemical arrays they are in. After engraving the main runes, it is necessary to engrave their auxiliary runes. For example, the auxiliary runes of the agility attribute include speed, smoothness, change of direction and other alchemical runes that help to enhance its agility. According to Lin En's plan, he needs to complete the refining of a complete alchemical array every day and complete the 4 alchemical arrays of the Desert Eagle for 4 consecutive days. On the 5th day, he will supplement the missing parts and connect them in series or parallel to complete the enchantment of the Desert Eagle. Chapter 44. It's great to be young. You can fall asleep right away. While Lin was refining an alchemy array with the dexterity attribute as the core, Malfoy had already set off towards the trophy display room with Crabbe and Goyle. On the other side, Harry and Ron also set off towards the trophy display room. Hermione failed to persuade them and had to follow them. On the way, they also took Neville, who was locked outside the common room, with them. Soon, the 2 groups arrived at the trophy display room one after the other. In the trophy display room, the crystal glass cabinets sparkled in the moonlight, and the trophies, shields, medals and statues flashed silver and gold in the dark. The 2 groups drew their wands at the same time and pointed at each other. Potter, I didn't expect you to dare to come. I thought you would hide in the dormitory and cry for your mother, Malfoy said sarcastically. Harry was not to be outdone and said sarcastically, really? I thought that was something only you would do. Are you sure you are not forcing me to take the blame for what you did? On the side, Ron imitated very vividly. I'm going to tell my dad. Ron's imitation show completely angered Malfoy. Malfoy walked up and pointed his wand at Harry. Come here, it's time for a wizard duel. As he said that, Malfoy performed the etiquette of a wizard duel in a very formal manner. And Harry also performed the duel ceremony in the way Ron taught him in a somewhat clumsy way. 3, 2, 1. Hot and hot. As the countdown ended, Malfoy took the lead in casting a not curse. As a child of a pure-blood family, Malfoy had naturally been exposed to magic in advance. Although his magic talent was not as high as Lin's, it was not a big problem for him to master some small evil spells in advance. Harry looked at the spell that was shot at him quickly and dodged it quickly. Harry didn't know how to cast much magic, so before the duel began, Ron told him to dodge Malfoy's spells as much as possible. Grinning whirl. Malfoy chanted again, and another beam of light quickly hit Harry. Harry dodged in a panic, and one spell after another hit Harry's feet. Potter, are you only good at running away? Why don't you change your name to Mouse? Malfoy laughed wantonly, but Harry, who was forced to dodge constantly, couldn't reply at all. But at this moment, Hermione suddenly came forward. Although she was very dissatisfied with Harry and Ron's violation of school rules, she didn't want to see her friend being beaten by Malfoy without any ability to fight back. I'm Harry's assistant. Harry is not feeling well, let me take over, Hermione shouted. In the absence of Irina, she was probably the only one in the Gryffindor camp who had the strength to fight Malfoy. Harry frowned and wanted to say something, but Ron covered his mouth and dragged him back. Although Ron was a fool, he was not stupid. With the help of a great god, they would definitely win easily. Malfoy did not care that Harry had changed his assistant. In his opinion, he only needed to defeat the opponent. Malfoy did not think Hermione was that powerful. After all, the opponent was just a muggle. Thinking of this, Malfoy cast the first spell at Hermione without hesitation. Tarantella Dance. Although Malfoy's dance spell was to control Hermione's movement so that she could only dance and could not dodge the subsequent spells, he also wanted to watch her have fun. Seeing this, Hermione got angry. Wingardium Leviosa. Although it was just a basic floating spell, it was not ordinary in Hermione's hand. A silver trophy flew high and then suddenly hit the back of Malfoy's head. Malfoy rolled his eyes and fell to the ground. It's good to be young. You can fall asleep as soon as you lie down. Hermione's instant kill made everyone stunned. Crabbe walked up quickly. According to the rules, he was Malfoy's assistant. Petrify all. But even Malfoy was knocked out by Hermione, let alone Crabbe. Hermione just casually threw out a full body binding spell and controlled Crabbe in place. Petrify all. Hermione, who was high on fighting, cast another full body binding spell and controlled the innocent looking Goyle. Hermione, you are my god. I'm sorry, Hermione, I was too fierce before. Harry and Ron's attitude towards Hermione has completely changed. The two looked at Hermione with admiration. Humph. This will not happen again. Don't violate school rules in the future. Hermione raised her head and planned to return to the team. Meow, but at this moment, a meow was heard. I saw a skinny cat with dark grey fur squatting at the door of the trophy display room, looking at everyone with its bulging eyes like light bulbs. The next moment, it ran away quickly. Oh no, it's Mrs. Norris. Filch must be nearby. Let's run. Ron exclaimed, holding Harry with his left hand and Hermione with his right hand. He ran towards the outside of the trophy display room, while Harry's other hand was holding the panting Neville. At this time, Filch's voice came from a distance. Mrs. Norris, have you seen the little wizard who violated the rules? I'm coming. Then, a sound of running came. This scared the Gryffindors so much that their souls almost flew away. Harry led everyone to quietly walk forward along a corridor full of armor. Fortunately, the Malfoy trio who were controlled in place bought them time. Filch first caught the Malfoy trio and then continued to chase Harry and others. After realizing that Filch's voice was getting closer and closer, the timid Neville couldn't help but scream. He ran away, but he was tripped and bumped into Ron and fell on a set of armor. Run! Harry shouted loudly, and the four of them ran at full speed along the corridor. After an unknown amount of time, Harry and the others ran to the end of the corridor, where there was a locked door. Hey, what are you doing? Just then, a voice like the sound of nature came from not far away from them. Hermione looked over in surprise. Irina, why are you here? Irina blinked innocently and said, I was just released by Professor McGonagall, and I heard ghosts and wolves howling here, so I came to see you. Ron sobbed, don't look. We are finished. We are about to die. Harry explained, we were chased all the way here by Filch, and this is a dead end. At this time, footsteps were heard in the distance, and the owner of the footsteps was obviously Filch, who had chased all the way here. Oh, come here quickly. Hermione was a little annoyed. She knocked on the lock of the locked door with her wand and shouted, open it. The lock clicked and opened. Hermione pushed Harry, Ron, and Neville in with force, then pulled Irina, who looked confused, in and finally closed the door again. Just when everyone thought they were safe, Irina poked Hermione carefully. Stop it, Irina. Hermione panted. Irina said speechlessly, I'm not making trouble. Please look up. Hearing this, Hermione looked up and was stunned. I saw a three-headed dog that was tall enough to support the ceiling, filling almost all the space. It had 3 heads and 3 pairs of ferocious eyes that rolled around, and 3 drooling mouths that seemed to want to swallow everyone in one bite. With the size of Harry and others, they were like snacks in front of this 3-headed dog, one bite at a time. Please recommend, reward and monthly votes. By the way, I wonder how many people are reading this book now? I'm wondering if it's necessary to set up a fan group or something. Chapter 45. I was careless and didn't dodge. Don't worry, it's asleep. Irina kindly comforted everyone. But how could everyone calm down? Exclamation mark. Rather than facing this terrifying monster, they would rather be captured by Filch. Harry fumbled to turn the door handle, and after everyone came out, he slammed the door shut, and then ran away. Everyone quickly ran back to the portrait of the fat lady on the 8th floor, and even Irina was dragged back by Hermione. Please, don't make such a fuss. It's just a 3-headed dog. Irina said helplessly. Just a 3-headed dog. Harry's eyes widened in disbelief. It can swallow 5 of us in one bite. After giving the command and walking into the Gryffindor common room, Harry and others calmed down. At this time, Hermione said angrily, you guys, didn't you see what it was standing on? Harry and Ron were confused. They only looked at the head of the 3-headed dog. Who knew what it was standing on? Exclamation mark. Finally, Irina smoothed Hermione's fur and said, I saw it. It's the trapdoor. Hermione calmed down after being smoothed by Irina. She nodded and said, yes, a trapdoor. It's obviously guarding something. Harry pondered, and he seemed to know the whereabouts of the dirty little bag in the underground vault number 713 of Gringotts. On the other side, the Malfoy trio returned to the dormitory in disgrace, after being severely scolded, and having a lot of house points deducted from Slytherin House. Looking at Lin, who was doing alchemy, he was immediately furious. If I had known earlier, I would have reported it directly. I'm so angry. Lin glanced at him. Why, you never beat him? Malfoy was immediately dissatisfied. What do you mean you never beat him? I pinned down that idiot Potter and beat him. I beat him with a smack, and Potter ran around like a mouse. But that Granger took advantage of my inattention and attacked me by surprise. She has no martial ethics at all. Lin, let me tell you, Granger's wand was pointed at me, but I was not afraid. I blocked it all. But who knew that she used floating control to throw a trophy at me? I was careless and did not dodge, so I was knocked down. Malfoy kept talking to Lin, as if he had no fault at all for losing. Crabbe and Goyle beside him were too scared to even look at him. So you still lost. If you're not convinced, fight again next time. What's the point of telling me? Lin was speechless. Malfoy chuckled. Hey, you're an alchemist, you must have some good stuff, right? Lend it to me. I promise to return it to you after I beat Potter. Lin spread his hands and said, nothing. Granger didn't use any alchemical props. You don't even have the confidence to defeat a muggle-born, right? Come on. He's not the reborn. Why are you looking for him? Exclamation mark. Hearing this, Malfoy immediately became dissatisfied. What are you talking about? How can I, a Malfoy, be defeated by a little muggle-born wizard? You wait. I'll practice spells for 2 days, and then I'll get back at him. After sending Malfoy away, Lin chuckled. What a child. Thinking of this, Lin continued to do the alchemy in his hand. It was not until 2 o'clock in the morning that he completed the alchemy array with the dexterity attribute as a core. Lin put away the mithril carving knife and went to bed. The next morning, Lin sat at the long table of Slytherin. Malfoy and others not far away winked at Harry, just like a big peacock in heat. This scene made the seniors of Slytherin unable to bear to watch. At this time, the owls poured into the hall as usual, and a slender package carried by 6 long-eared owls attracted everyone's attention. Lin knew that this was the flying broom Nimbus 2000 given to Harry by Professor McGonagall. Although Lin was not interested in flying in Quidditch, this flying broom still attracted his attention. Why is the Nimbus 2000 faster than other flying brooms? Is there any special alchemical array added? Exclamation mark. You know, the flying broom is also a kind of alchemical product, which naturally contains various alchemical arrays. Lin En had previously secretly taken a broken flying broom from the flying class equipment that was too broken to fly, and analyzed the alchemy array contained in it during the summer vacation. The auxiliary rune of the speed attribute that he used to engrave the agility attribute alchemy array last night came from that flying broom. If I also buy a Nimbus 2000, wouldn't I be able to analyze the alchemy array in it and make use of it? Lin En thought so. In fact, ordinary alchemists cannot easily analyze the alchemy array contained in other alchemy products, because most alchemists use special alchemy techniques to hide their alchemy arrays when they are doing alchemy, so that they are not known to outsiders. Otherwise, if any alchemist can analyze the alchemy array in the Nimbus 2000 after getting it, then pirated Nimbus 2000s will probably be everywhere, and the price of Nimbus 2000 will certainly plummet. The reason why Lin could easily analyze the alchemical arrays contained in other alchemical products was because Nicholas Flamel taught him a special alchemical secret method before he left. This alchemical secret method can make the alchemical array hidden inside the alchemical product emerge on the surface, so that Lin can observe it with his naked eyes. In this backward British magic world without so-called patent laws, if Lin analyzes and publishes the alchemical arrays of well-known brands of magic products, I'm afraid that the entire British magic world will be in chaos. If Nicholas Flamel, with his vision of more than 600 years, could not determine that Lin was generally a good child, he would never have taught Lin such a killer weapon, but would rather die than take it underground. At the Gryffindor long table, Ron looked at Harry's text message to his Professor McGonagall with envy and sighed. Nimbus 2000. I haven't even touched it. Irina, who was not far away, also looked over with some curiosity. Although her flying talent was not as good as Harry's, she still had a certain interest in flying. Of course, it was just an interest in flying, not the fun of Quidditch. If Irina was asked to join the Gryffindor Quidditch team, she would most likely refuse. After learning that the package in their hands contained an Nimbus 2000 flying broom, Harry and Ron immediately became restless. After all, it was a crime to possess a treasure. Only by hiding the flying broom in the dormitory could Harry feel at ease. Chapter 46 Ron, put away your fragile self-esteem. So, Harry and Ron hurried back to the dormitory and hid Nimbus 2000. During the whole day's classes, Harry's heart seemed to stay in the dormitory with Nimbus 2000. He didn't listen to any classes at all. It was not until 7 o'clock in the evening that he couldn't wait to take Nimbus 2000 to the direction of the Quidditch field. On the other side, Lin was worried about something. Last year, Professor Green gave him a long list of books as auxiliary materials for his 3 or 4 years of alchemy. Even though his current alchemy level is not low, the books on the list can still provide great help for his alchemy. But the problem is that most of the books in the second half of these lists are stored in the restricted book area of the library. After Professor Green left Hogwarts, the signature slip that Professor Green gave to Lin naturally lost its original effectiveness, which made Lin unable to borrow books from the restricted book area with the signature slip as before. It's not like Lin En hadn't thought about asking his dean, Professor Snape, or other professors for a signature slip, but it's clear that no professor would let him into the restricted area just because he wanted to study alchemy, which was an elective course for 6th graders. After all, even the alchemy knowledge that was an elective course for 6th graders could be borrowed in the ordinary books area of the library. The restricted area contained some advanced and even dangerous knowledge, and these professors would naturally not let students touch it without permission for the safety of their students. So, Lin En had to go out at night after curfew, using the disillusionment charm taught by Professor Green to enter the restricted area invisibly to look for the books on the list. Since the library was cast with a warning magic, even if Lin En cast the disillusionment charm, he could only hide in the restricted area to read books, or bring a notebook to copy them himself. Otherwise, once the books in the restricted area were taken out of the library's warning magic would be triggered, and Lin En would be discovered, even if the books were copied using the copy double charm. In the following week, Lin En not only had to refine an alchemy array every night, but also had to go to the forbidden section of the library to look for books. Soon it was the weekend, and Lin En had completed the enchantment of the Desert Eagle, and copied a whole alchemy book from the forbidden section. Of course, he did not copy this alchemy book for nothing, as he could use the several alchemy runes and alchemy array diagrams recorded in this book when enchanting the bullets of the Desert Eagle. Yes, Lin En's plan before Halloween was to enchant all the 100 bullets that came with the Desert Eagle. Under normal circumstances, it was not realistic to enchant 100 bullets in less than 2 months, but the size of the bullet was so small that it was impossible to enchant a complicated alchemy array. For simple alchemy arrays, Lin En's engraving speed would naturally be much faster. However, it was also difficult to engrave an alchemy array on a small object, which put a certain test on Lin En's energy. On the other hand, in the 2 months before Halloween, Irina began to explore the wandless casting of the freezing spell by her own silent casting method. Without guidance, wandless casting is not so easy to do. At least Irina failed after trying wandless casting for 2 months. But Irina's freezing spell is not without any progress. At least without the wand, Irina can condense a small piece of ice for her own use. Under the strong affinity of ice element, the ice that can be condensed out of thin air can be transformed into a dagger and other shapes by Irina, which allows Irina to have a certain self-protection ability when she loses the wand. Soon, Halloween is coming again. On Halloween Eve, the whole Hogwarts castle is filled with the sweet and tempting smell of roasted pumpkin. In the spells class of the first year students at Hogwarts, Professor Flitwick announced that he would teach everyone how to cast the levitation spell, but young wizards like Irina, Hermione and Malfoy, who are gifted or have been exposed to magic in advance have already learned the levitation spell by themselves. Professor Flitwick divided the students in the classroom into two groups. Harry's partner was the explosive genius Seamus, and Ron's partner was Hermione. As for Irina, when Professor Flitwick demonstrated the levitation spell, she was praised and given extra points by Professor Flitwick because she used a silent levitation spell to levitate a feather and was given the privilege of not having to practice. Come on, Hermione. Irina held a bag of snacks and cheered Hermione on while eating. However, judging from the proficiency of Hermione in performing the levitation spell in the trophy display room that day, she didn't seem to need Irina's encouragement at all. The levitation spell of genius little wizards only requires them to wave their wands and think about it, but for ordinary little wizards, they need to strictly follow the requirements to cast the levitation spell, wave, and shake, and recite the spell accurately so that they can cast the levitation spell. Obviously, Ron is not a so-called genius little wizard. Wingardium Leviosa! Ron shouted, swinging his wand like a sledgehammer to hit someone. Looking at Ron's exaggerated movements, Irina couldn't help but blush. You're wrong. His partner Hermione said bluntly, it's Wingardium Leviosa, and the word ga should be pronounced long and clearly. Ron's face darkened. His fragile self-esteem did not allow him to be taught a lesson by others. He roared, since you are so powerful, then you come and try it. Ouch. Irina swallowed the snack in her mouth. Ron, you seem to have forgotten that Hermione defeated Malfoy with the levitation spell. Hearing this, Ron was stunned. Hermione waved her wand, Wingardium Leviosa. Not to mention the feathers in front of Hermione. Even the table in front of them flew up with Hermione's thoughts. Hermione's beautiful levitation spell naturally won the praise of Professor Flitwick. After class, Ron was in a very bad mood. He felt that his self-esteem had been trampled. He said to Harry beside him irritably, no wonder everyone can't stand her. To be honest, she is too nosy. She is like a nightmare. At this moment, Ron felt that his shoulder was hit by someone. The person did not turn around after hitting him, but hurried over. Ron looked and found that the person was Hermione. She seemed to be crying. Suddenly, Ron's head seemed to be hit hard by someone. It was Irina. Ron, you are really too much. Hermione is kind enough to teach you, hoping that you can learn the levitation spell and become more powerful. But what are you thinking? Do you think she is mocking you? Do you think you deserve it? Ron, put away your fragile self-esteem. Your face is given by yourself, not by others. Irina scolded Ron. As Hermione's best friend, she naturally felt bad when she saw Hermione so sad. She looked very angry. Even when Malfoy called her a mudblood, she had never been so angry. Ron believed that, if it was not him standing here, but another little wizard, Irina would have cast a freezing spell on him. After accusing Ron, Irina did not stay for long, but chased Hermione. Please recommend, reward and monthly ticket. Chapter 47 I Slide. In the next class, Harry and Ron found that Irina and Hermione did not show up, and they were not seen for the whole afternoon. On the way to the hall for the Halloween dinner, they accidentally heard Parvati Patil telling Lavender that Hermione was crying sadly in the girls' room, and no matter how Irina tried to persuade her, it was useless. Thinking of Irina's previous scolding, Ron felt even more uncomfortable. I'm not wrong, it's obviously Hermione who is too nosy, Ron muttered. Even Harry felt that Ron was too extreme. You know, if Hermione hadn't helped on the day of the duel with Malfoy, I'm afraid he and Ron would have been beaten by Malfoy. However, after entering the hall and seeing the colorful Halloween decorations, the two immediately forgot about Hermione. On the other side, Lin walked into the hall with a blank expression. He quickly ate a few bites of food to satisfy his stomach, and then closed his eyes and rested at the Slytherin table. He understood that today was the first day that Quirrell would act like a demon, and he had to be prepared for all possible emergencies. After all, the underground classroom was under the castle, and the Slytherin dormitory was also under the castle. No one knew whether the damn troll would suddenly change its original route and meet Lin En and the others who were returning to the dormitory! Lin En had been conserving his energy all day, and even stopped enchanting the Desert Eagle bullets a day in advance. It was not that Lin En had not thought about using the Desert Eagle to shoot the troll directly, but not to mention whether the Desert Eagle bullets could break through the defense of the troll's thick skin and flesh. The fact that the Desert Eagle would be confiscated by the professor alone meant that Lin En was destined not to do so. The Desert Eagle was Lin En's biggest trump card this school year, and he naturally would not expose it too early. At this moment, Garlic-haired Quirrell suddenly rushed into the auditorium. He fell to the ground with a look of horror on his face, gasping and shouting, "The troll is in the underground classroom. I thought you should know." After that, Quirrell fainted. The hall was in chaos, with countless young wizards panicking and screaming in confusion. Lin looked at the fainted Quirrell coldly. "Oh, you acted quite well. Should I give you an Oscar?" At this time, Professor Dumbledore used his wand to shoot several purple fireworks, which made everyone quiet down. "Prefect," Professor Dumbledore said in a low voice, "take the students of each college to the dormitory immediately." So, the prefect at the front of the Slytherin table stood up and asked everyone to follow him back to the dormitory immediately. Lin followed the team, and just as he was about to return to the dormitory as the prefect said, he suddenly found that it was not only Hermione who disappeared from the Gryffindor table, but also the girl named Irina Lowell. Irina Lowell had more conspicuous silver hair, so her disappearance was naturally easy to be noticed by others. Lin's face sank. Could it be that Lowell and Hermione were also in the underground classroom together? Exclamation mark. He changed his mind. Although he didn't know whether the man named Lowell was a time traveler, he didn't want this only possibility to be killed by the troll because of a careless mistake. So, Lin En cast an illusion spell on himself and quietly left from the end of the team. On the other side, Irina helped Hermione stand up. Although Hermione was still very sad, her empty stomach forced her to go back to the auditorium for dinner. "Let's go. The dinner will be over if we don't leave." Irina patted Hermione's back gently, and with the other hand, she gently wiped away the tears from the corners of Hermione's eyes. Although Irina seemed to be very patient, she was very anxious in her heart. Others didn't know, but she knew that a troll was coming later. If they didn't take Hermione away, I'm afraid they would be blocked by the troll. Fortunately, she had an idea and used the matter of eating to lure Hermione to go with her. Otherwise Hermione would cry until who knows when. But at this moment, heavy footsteps came from outside the women's restroom, and a stench like water from a stinky dish, boiled and poured into the snail noodle soup with minced stinky tofu and durian drifted in. Irina felt that this was very similar to the exhaust gas from cars that exceeded the emission limit in her previous life. After taking a deep breath, the sour smell echoed back and forth in her nose. Ugh, ugh. Irina and Hermione retched at the same time. Their movement seemed to attract the attention of the troll. The troll seemed to peek inside at the door, then slowly lowered its head and went into the women's restroom. "Ah!" Hermione exclaimed immediately. The troll was 12 feet tall, with dull skin, as grey as granite. Its huge and clumsy body was like a pile of huge gravel, with a small head like a cocoa bean on top. The troll's short legs were as thick as tree stumps, and underneath were flat, rough, calloused feet. The smell it exuded was disgusting, and it was holding a thick wooden stick in its hand. Because its arms were very long, the stick was dragging on the ground. "Damn it." Irina cursed inwardly. Hermione's exclamation made the troll look over. It was obvious that this battle was inevitable. Just as Irina was about to take the initiative, the door of the women's bathroom was suddenly locked, and there were cheers from two idiots outside. This directly ruined Irina's original plan to pull the troll. "Are you guys outside sick?" Irina cursed angrily, waving her wand in her hand and casting a freezing spell at the troll. Hearing Irina's angry curse, Harry and Ron outside realized that they were still in the women's bathroom. Harry and Ron quickly opened the door again. "Wingardium Leviosa." Seeing this, Irina quickly cast a levitation spell, lifted Hermione, who was standing still, from the top of the troll to the door, and threw her out. Hermione fell directly on Harry and Ron at the door. "Take her out first, I'll be out soon," Irina said, and she ran towards the troll quickly and kept casting freezing spells on her hands. However, the troll's skin had a strong magic resistance. The freezing spell on the troll's skin could only cause a layer of frost on its skin surface, but it was far from freezing it. Irina's attack seemed to anger the troll, and the troll raised the thick wooden stick in his hand and smashed it on the head of the small Irina. At this time, Irina had already come to the feet of the troll, with wash basins on both sides, and she had almost no way to avoid it. Seeing this, Irina had to close her eyes and slide under the troll. Chapter 48. Stand back. Leave this to me. Fortunately, Irina's sliding tackle narrowly slipped under the troll, and came behind the troll just before the stick fell, smashed to pieces. While running out of the toilet, she did not forget to turn back, and cast a crushing spell, to attack the troll's anus. Ouch. This crushing spell seemed to have really caused trauma to the troll. The troll let out a painful howl, and then his eyes turned red, and he chased Irina with a big stick. At this time, Irina had already run out of the toilet, and met up with Harry, Ron, and Hermione. After a huge shock in her heart, Hermione had come back to her senses. When she saw Irina running over, she met Irina and cast an eye sickness spell at the troll. Harry, Ron, you go find the professor first, Hermione and I will hold it back. Irina ordered, and she retreated, while using the freezing spell to slow down the troll's movement speed. Although her freezing spell was ineffective, the frost that continued to form on the surface of the troll's skin was constantly slowing down its movements. No, we will defeat the troll with you, Harry said loudly. Ron also nodded in agreement and said, I know I was sorry for you before, I will never leave alone. Irina was about to vomit blood. Don't you know what your magic level is? Can you break the magic resistance of the troll? Hurry up and find the professor. Irina was about to collapse. Hearing this, Harry and Ron looked at each other and nodded. Okay, you better be careful. With that, the two turned and ran out. Finally, no one was dragging them down, and Hermione also kept up with Irina's pace. Although Hermione's freezing spell was not as powerful as Irina's, their goal was not to freeze the troll or kill it, but to slow it down until the professor arrived. However, things are not always as people wish. The troll seemed to be even more angry under the attack of the two. In its eyes, being toyed with by two little guys was a huge shame. This troll was like the boss in the game that entered a violent state. The frost condensed on the surface of its body shattered under its strength, and the thick wooden stick was swung out by it with force, sweeping across the ground. Irina rolled over and narrowly avoided the sweep of the wooden stick, but Hermione was unfortunately hit in the back. Her body flew backwards, and hit the wall dozens of meters away and fainted. Seeing this, Irina was a little desperate. Harry and Ron had just left, and they would definitely not be able to bring the professor back in a short time. Her spells were almost immune to the troll, which almost put her in a desperate situation. Clear water like a spring. The ground is frozen, and the sky is cold. Irina gritted her teeth and almost overdrew the little magic power left in her body. A large amount of water flew out from the top of her wand, and turned into solid ice under the control of the freezing spell. Under Irina's control, the ice exploded, and turned into countless sharp ice cones. Go. Irina waved her wand vigorously, and countless ice cones shot towards the troll like a hail of bullets. However, even though the ice cones were powerful, they were no match for the troll's thick skin. At most, these ice cones cut the troll's skin, and made the troll bleed a little, but they could not cause more damage to it. The troll strode forward, and swung the wooden stick to hit Irina continuously. At this moment, Irina's magic power was almost exhausted, and as a girl, she had already lost her physical strength. Facing this terrifying attack, she could no longer dodge. Plop. Her calves softened, and she stumbled and fell forward, which made her completely lose hope of dodging this attack. Damn it, if I had known earlier, I would have tied Hermione back to the hall. Irina regretted it very much. Why was she so soft-hearted? Exclamation mark. In the end, she was also doomed. At this moment, a golden beam of light broke through the air and hit the troll's cocoa bean-like head hard. The huge force hit the troll, causing the troll's movements to deviate greatly, and the thick wooden stick also flew out of his hand. The wooden stick hit Irina's side hard, and the air waved through the petite Irina away. Irina looked in the direction where the beam of light came from. I saw a black-haired boy slowly walking out of the shadows in the corner of the wall. Dozens of metal blocks were suspended around the boy. These metal blocks were emitting strong light, and seemed to be accumulating power. The black-haired boy had dark red eyes. There seemed to be a dark red light flashing on the ends of his hair. His eyes were staring at her. Stand back, leave this to me. Lin En said lightly, and walked to Irina on foot. The dozens of metal blocks floating around him seemed to have completed the accumulation of power. Dozens of golden beams like the previous ones burst out from the metal blocks and continued to bombard the troll. Blood holes appeared on the troll's body. These golden beams of light did not seem ordinary. There was a golden energy on the blood holes that was corroding the troll's body and expanding the troll's injuries. Senior, you. Irina looked at Lin En in disbelief. This black-haired boy should only be in the 2nd grade. How could he have such a strong power? Exclamation mark. In her opinion, even the professors of Hogwarts might not be so strong. Lin En glanced at her, took out a bottle of potion from his pocket, and threw it to Irina. Healing potion. For 2 people. Lin En said, and a ball of fire ignited in his left hand. This ball of fire was glowing with black light. This was the forbidden magic fire that Lin En had previously refined in Nicholas Flamel's manner. Although the trolls relied on brute force, the forbidden magic power of the forbidden magic fire had no effect on them, but the flames that were fused with alchemy had a higher temperature, and their lethality was naturally far greater than the magic flames summoned by ordinary flames. Lin En swung his left hand, and the forbidden magic fire flew out immediately, clinging to the surface of the troll's body like a thorn in the bone, constantly burning the troll's body. As the flame flew out, Lin En waved his magic wand with his right hand, and the gravel on the ground suddenly turned into countless vines, entangled the troll's toes, making it unable to move. Under the burning of this terrifying flame, the troll kept screaming, but without the wooden stick, it had no ability to resist with such a bulky body. The flames kept burning the troll's body, burning its skin into black charcoal. On the other side, the metal blocks around Lin En were also constantly shooting out golden beams, causing greater damage to the troll. A few minutes later, accompanied by a thicker golden beam bursting out, shooting into the troll's left eye, shooting the troll's head, and the troll's bulky body finally fell down. Irina came over to take a look. The troll's head was completely shot out, and countless blood mixed with brain matter exploded all over the ground. This disgusting scene made Irina vomit non-stop. According to everyone's suggestions, the author has revised the introduction. Once the system is approved, it should be displayed. At that time, please help me see if the new introduction is okay. In addition, the author has set up a book club. The group number is 458,582,079, and the password is 1990. Welcome everyone to join our big family. Thank you for your support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49. If it weren't for that senior, Hermione and I would have been dead. Lin didn't say much. He glanced at the direction he came from and seemed to sense something. He waved his wand and cast a disillusionment charm on himself. He didn't feel much about this disgusting scene because he had seen Kasiragi with his head shot out on Halloween last year. Seeing this scene again, he naturally had a certain immunity. After casting the disillusionment charm, Lin left the scene immediately. And just a few breaths after Lin left, a series of loud footsteps came from a distance. Irina, Hermione, we're back. Are you okay? After hearing that there was almost no movement here, Harry and Ron over there became anxious, and the two arrived here almost at the speed of flying. After seeing the troll's exploded head, the two froze in place, and then vomited with Irina. Soon, Professor McGonagall, Professor Snape, and Quirrell, who was following at the end, rushed over. After seeing the troll's exploded head, Professor McGonagall and Professor Snape's brows were obviously frowned, and then they showed shock. Quirrell rolled his eyes and fainted again. Professor McGonagall came over. She looked at Irina in disbelief and asked, "Ms. Lowell, did you do all this?" Irina reluctantly raised her head. Her originally beautiful face was now covered with dust. She shook her head and said, "No, Professor, just now a senior came here to save me." Hearing this, Professor McGonagall frowned. She looked at the troll's skin that was burned black by the flames, the body pierced by some unknown magic, and the vines on the ground that were transformed by transfiguration, and she also understood that what Irina said was true. Such a powerful magic power and level of transfiguration naturally could not be achieved by Irina and others. However, looking at the somewhat familiar vines, Professor McGonagall thought, with such a powerful transfiguration ability, the other party should be a member of her transfiguration club. Irina, can you tell me the appearance of that senior? He saved you and got rid of the troll for Hogwarts. We should all thank him. Professor McGonagall thought for a while and asked Irina. Irina hesitated for a moment and said, I only remember that he was surrounded by many metal blocks, wearing Slytherin robes, with black hair and a little dark red at the ends. As she spoke, her eyes suddenly lit up. Oh, yes, he is very handsome, Irina said. Throughout her 2 lives, she had seen many handsome boys, but the black-haired boy who saved her was one of the few who could amaze her. Of course, this was inevitably due to the aura of a hero saving a beauty, but the other party's appearance itself was already worthy of praise. Are you sure that student is from Slytherin? At this time, Professor Snape slowly walked over and asked in a deep voice. As the Dean of Slytherin College, he didn't even know that there was such a powerful student in his college. If the situation was true, then it was his dereliction of duty. Professor McGonagall was thinking. There were not many students who met the criteria of Slytherin, black hair, and high level of transfiguration. She was familiar with only one person, Lin En, but he was just a second-year student. How could he have the magic power to crush the troll? You know, it would be very difficult for an ordinary second-year wizard to even cast a disarming spell. Professor McGonagall shook her head and put the mysterious Slytherin student behind her. The most urgent thing now was to deal with the troll. At this moment, Professor McGonagall seemed to have thought of something. Her eyes were full of anger and her lips were pale. So, what kind of tricks are you playing? You are lucky that you were not killed by it. Why don't you stay in the dormitory honestly? Professor McGonagall questioned the 3 people angrily. Irina glanced at Hermione who had fainted. She first picked her up carefully and fed half a bottle of the healing medicine given by Lin to Hermione and herself respectively. Then she looked at Professor McGonagall and explained, Professor, Hermione and I have been in the girls' room. We didn't know what happened in the hall until the troll appeared, and we realized it was too late. Ron stepped forward and admitted his mistakes. Professor, this is all my fault. She heard me saying bad things about Hermione after class in the afternoon, which led to her emotional breakdown and crying in the girls' room. Harry didn't want his good brother to be punished alone, so he stood up to share the responsibility. Professor, I was wrong too. I should have stopped Ron. After all, Hermione is our friend. Professor McGonagall looked at the people in front of her, and the anger in her heart subsided slightly. She said sternly, Mr. Potter and Mr. Weasley, Gryffindor will be deducted 30 points because of your mistakes. Harry and Ron immediately hung their heads uncomfortably, but they didn't say much. After all, it was all their own fault. But soon, Professor McGonagall continued to speak. Her tone became gentle. However, you did not face the troll alone, but sought help from the professor, which won Gryffindor 5 points. In addition, Miss Lovell, you and Hermione's brave behavior of holding the troll and preventing it from leaving the underground corridor and hurting other students won you 10 points each for Gryffindor. In the end, Irina and Hermione each won 10 points for Gryffindor, and Harry and Ron won 5 points together, and the 4 of them won a total of 25 house points. But because of Harry and Ron's mistakes, Gryffindor was deducted 30 points, so even if they got 25 points, Gryffindor's score still dropped by 5 points. At this time, Professor Snape's low voice sounded, although the identity of the student cannot be confirmed, Slytherin will add 30 points for the fact that the student defeated the troll and saved his classmates. Professor McGonagall had no objection to this. I will inform Professor Dumbledore about this matter. You can leave. Professor McGonagall looked at Irina and others and said. Irina quickly carried Hermione away from the disgusting corridor and walked up 2 flights of stairs, followed closely by Harry and Ron. Irina, why did you tell Professor McGonagall that a Slytherin defeated the troll? If you said it was you, then the 30 house points would belong to Gryffindor instead of our mortal enemy Slytherin. Ron suddenly complained. He had a very bad impression of Slytherin. Hearing this, Irina stopped. She glanced at Ron coldly and said, if it weren't for that senior, Hermione and I would have died. Chapter 50. Please give me some advice. Hearing Irina's words, Ron was stunned. He realized what he had said. Yes, if it weren't for that Slytherin senior, he would have lost 2 friends forever, but he was hostile to him because he was a Slytherin. Ron slapped himself in the face. Irina, I'm sorry, Ron did have many shortcomings, but he was generally a kind person. He naturally didn't want to repay kindness with enmity. Irina carried Hermione to the school hospital on the 2nd floor of Hogwarts Castle, and Harry and Ron followed. Madame Pomfrey carefully examined Hermione's injuries. The abominable troll was really strong. Hermione had several broken ribs, and her spine also showed signs of fracture. If it weren't for the fact that this was a magical world and magic could heal most physical injuries, I'm afraid Hermione would have died here. Poor child, her injuries are very serious. If her injuries were not maintained by the power of magic potion, I'm afraid she wouldn't be able to hold on here. Although I used magic to treat her, she still needs to be hospitalized for a few days for observation. Madame Pomfrey cast a healing spell on Hermione, and then said to Irina and others. Irina was a little depressed. She nodded gently, did not disturb Hermione's rest, and left the school hospital. On the other side, Lin returned to the Slytherin common room from another corridor. As early as, after killing the troll, he heard the movements of Harry and others, so he did not stay at the scene for a long time, but used the disillusionment spell to leave the scene in advance. At this time, the common room was crowded with people. Even the self-respecting and noble little snakes could not calm down now, which made the Slytherin common room very noisy. Since the dinner was interrupted by Quirrell just at the beginning, the little snakes were eating the food served. Lin did not join them, but returned to his dormitory and lifted the disillusionment spell. The Malfoy trio was still eating in the common room, and the dormitory was empty. Lin raised his hand and took off the dozens of metal blocks that were clinging to his clothes and put them into his canvas bag. These metal blocks were a parting gift from Nicholas Flamel. Lin named them all chemical floating guns, which could autonomously draw magic power from the air to charge and fire magic beams with higher lethality at the enemy according to Lin's thoughts. The combat principle of these all-chemical floating guns is similar to the portable all-chemical array that Professor Green used when fighting Cassilici on Halloween last year, but the all-chemical array on the all-chemical floating gun can use special all-chemical creations as carriers. Although its power is not as strong as Professor Green's portable all-chemical array, it consumes almost zero magic power for Lin. After all, apart from spending a small amount of magic power to control them to fight, Lin does not need to spend more magic power at all. Could it be she is really a time traveler? Lin frowned. Although he did not arrive at the first time, it was obvious that this giant monster incident was completely inconsistent with what he knew. In the original book, Hermione was not injured, and Harry and Ron did not run to find the professor's help. If all these changes are the butterfly effect brought about by the time traveler, then it makes sense, but Lin En can't be sure whether this butterfly effect is caused by the silver-haired girl or by himself. Although Lin En is sure that he has hardly interfered with the development of the plot, this possibility of existence makes the rigorous Lin En unable to ignore it. It seems that I still have to test it more. Thinking so, Lin En disarmed himself. The next day, Irina got up very early. She didn't even have breakfast and ran to the school hospital to visit Hermione. With the help of healing magic, Hermione recovered very well. She smiled and told Irina that she would be able to recover and be discharged in 2 days. This made Irina regain her original cheerfulness. She hummed a little song and came to the hall to attend the breakfast banquet. Just as she sat down at the Gryffindor table and picked up a piece of bread to start eating, she saw Lin En, who was eating at the Slytherin table. Seeing the familiar black-haired boy, her eyes lit up immediately, and she stood up and wanted to say hello. But at this moment, the black-haired boy seemed to look at her. Irina saw the black-haired boy smiled at her mysteriously, put his index finger in front of his lips, and made a hush gesture. The black-haired boy shook his head gently and made another gesture. Irina seemed to understand what he meant. She suppressed her emotions and sat down again to enjoy the breakfast. After the breakfast was over, Irina came to the lawn outside the castle, and the black-haired boy was already waiting here. "Senior, thank you." Irina thanked him gratefully. Lin En shook his head slightly and asked, "How is the injury of the girl with you?" Lin En was referring to Hermione. Since he had not come into contact with her this school year, he did not directly say Hermione's name. Irina was stunned for a moment, then said in a clear voice, "Hermione has recovered very well, and thanks to the healing medicine you gave us." Madame Pomfrey said that, if it weren't for your healing medicine to maintain Hermione's injuries, she might not have made it to the school hospital. The effect of that healing medicine was particularly good, even several times better than the healing medicine that can be bought in Diagon Alley, which made Irina feel that Lin's background must be extraordinary. That's good. You should be careful this school year. After all, Hogwarts doesn't seem to be peaceful this year, Lin said meaningfully. Irina nodded vigorously and said, "Yeah, thank you senior. By the way, my name is Irina Lowell senior. Just call me Irina." Lin nodded slightly and said, "Lin Rowell. Is this senior from the Rowell family?" Exclamation mark. Irina was a little surprised, but when she thought of Lin being from Slytherin College, she was relieved. Although he is from a pure-blood family, he is surprisingly good. Irina thought so. Irina looked at Lin En's left hand and asked curiously, "By the way, Senior Luoa, when I saw you dealing with the troll yesterday, your left hand threw out flames. Was that a wandless spell?" Irina's eyes sparkled. You know, the goal she is trying to overcome now is the wandless casting of the freezing spell. Maybe the senior can give her some advice. Lin En nodded. Irina said quickly, "Senior Luoa, to be honest, I'm trying to cast the freezing spell without a wand, but I have been unable to find the key points. Although it is a bit presumptuous, I hope you will give me some advice. Please recommend, reward and monthly ticket." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.